Hello, my name is Katherine Gregor. I'm a translator from Italian and French. And it is my absolute delight to present this book, How to Train Your Human by Babas, otherwise known as Barbara Caponi, published most graciously by HarperVia. Cats, we know, are a superior species. They do say dogs have owners, but cats have staff, don't they? This is a guidebook for your cat to know how to manage you, and how, should you decide to go on holiday or do something else, how your cat can ensnare, boss and subject to its every will and whim the next human. I'd like to read you an extract and you'll know what I mean. Humans. A few notes on the species. Humans belong to the family of great apes. It's not their fault. Like many primates, they are lively, noisy creatures equipped with prehensile front paws. In this species, the hind paws are partly atrophied through the bipedal position they insist on assuming. They are large animals, oblong in shape, with no tail, and usually clumsier than other apes. They have a mane, especially developed in females, but otherwise they have no fur except in the most preposterous areas of their body. Their muzzle is flat, though not unattractive, and the only characteristics that suggest anything vaguely feline are the frontal eyes. They have large, practically useless nose and ears that do not move. The male of the species have whiskers, which it cannot, however, use. The most noticeable characteristic of these bipeds is that their bodies are coated with things that adhere to them like a second skin, and you will discover with horror are in fact sometimes someone else's skin. They have things they put on their heads, things that go in front of their eyes, and things that dangle from their bodies. On occasion, the females of the species slip their hind legs into things that make even the most basic motion difficult. And when they leave their dens, they carry with them so many things that they require special containers called handbags. As you can easily guess, all these add-ons, which cling to them and make them heavier, do nothing to lessen their clumsiness. We call this human obsession with things thingitis. Thingitis occupies a huge proportion of these creatures' lives, and we will frequently return to this topic. This topic and many others. How to train your human, a must for your cat, past, present, future, and for all the cats in your life. Enjoy.
A woman believes she can put up with anything until she finds herself waving a scarf as she lip-syncs the "Oh, sí, Real Madrid" chant in the nosebleed seats of the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium, the afternoon after a night in high heels. With pain on the tips of my fingers, on the tip of my tongue, in my ass, in my pride, and suffering advanced symptoms of dehydration. It was such a ridiculous, idiotic situation, unworthy of being classified as a tragedy. Rarely have I felt such deep sadness in such a ludicrous atmosphere, so inappropriate for someone dying inside, an atmosphere that, what's more, I had chosen voluntarily. Of all the absurd rituals I subjected myself to in order to maintain that masquerade, soccer fandom was the most incomprehensible. Letting yourself be carried along by the tide had a price. Sometimes it was pure suffering, and other times it was the cost of finding yourself mixed up in asinine rituals, like some medieval theater of cocks and farts. Then all you could do was go with the flow until it was over, and later lick the ensuing wounds in private. I'd started accepting an invite from a friend I'd known since primary school, and ended up at the stadium with some regularity. I never felt comfortable amid heterosexual men. I camouflaged best I could, and pulled out the thespian I'd been training all my life. The atmosphere was unpleasant and overwhelming. It really bothered me that soccer was the entertainment hopelessly associated with the working class, and it made me sick how journalists would promote saccharine stories of players bringing hope to the humble neighborhoods they'd grown up in. It seemed like another male scheme to impose their entertainment as incontestable mass phenomena. In the period when I frequented that stadium, I saw few women and a lot of boys, the sons of workers, who began by cheering the home team on and ended up with shaved heads and giving the fascist salute. It was a league match between Madrid and Barcelona, a classic or derby or whatever they're called. I was feeling terrible. Under the weather, my anxiety through the roof. The occasion was unusual in that I wasn't at the stadium only with some neighborhood friends and their buddies, but with my father, too. He didn't show up to games often, but he hadn't wanted to miss such an important match. I felt somewhat better when he came. He didn't mind the crowds, and I liked seeing him happy. We didn't have many chances to do things together. He always had more things in common with my brother, which was logical. Going to the game or watching it on television with him somewhat relieved my dissociation. It was lovely to be by his side in a context he enjoyed so much. Celebrating goals with a hug was a way to feel close to him, like when I was still a kid. When you pass as a man, you don't have many opportunities to hug your father, even if you want to, really badly. That shared space somewhat justified the miserable self-flagellation.
Hello, my name is Boris Dralyuk, and I am the translator of Andrey Kurkov's The Silver Bow. The novel is the first in a series of detective stories set in 1919 in Kiev, which was a very tumultuous period in the city's history and in Ukrainian history, when the dream of an independent Ukraine was squashed eventually by Soviet forces. The novel is full of bloodshed and terror and calamity, but it also has a heart of gold, and that heart belongs to Samson Kolechka, our amateur detective. Now, I say amateur, he has really no training as a detective, but through a series of unforeseen and unforeseeable events, he becomes a detective with the new Soviet forces. The Soviet hold on power is anything but strong at this moment. As Mikhail Bulgakov noted, a man who knew Kiev quite well at this period, power changed hands 5 or 6 times in the course of a single year in this period. So Samson, has cast his lot with the Soviet forces, but he himself is still very much confused about who's in charge and who ought to be in charge. The novel opens with a rather frightening scene, and I'm going to read the first few paragraphs. Samson was deafened by the sound of the saber striking his father's head. He caught the glint of the flashing blade out of the corner of his eye and stepped into a puddle. His already dead father's left hand pushed him aside, so that the next saber neither quite struck nor quite missed his ginger-haired head, slicing off his right ear. He managed to reach out and catch the falling ear, clutching it in his fist before it hit the gutter. His father, meanwhile, collapsed right onto the road, his head split in two. A horse stamped the body into the ground with a hind leg's shod hoof before its rider dug in his spurs and charged forward at a dozen townsfolk who were running and leaping into the gutters, realizing what awaited them. 5 more riders galloped past. but Samson didn't see them. He was lying flat against the slope of the gutter, the palm of his left hand open on the wet earth, and the fist of his right hand tucked under his head. His wound burned and burned, loudly and sonorously, as if someone were hammering a steel rail right above it. Hot blood poured down his cheek and seeped under his collar. It started raining again. Samson raised his head. He saw before him the sole of his father's dark blue English-made high-button shoe, which, though splattered with mud, still looked noble. His father had worn them constantly and carefully for 5 years, since 1914, when a shoe dealer in Hysjatik, spooked by the outbreak of war, had lowered the price, rightly sensing that international hostilities didn't bode well for the sale of fashionable goods. Samson didn't wish to see his dead father in full, with his head split open, so he crawled backward along the gutter, tightly clutching the severed ear. He got out onto the road, but couldn't straighten up. For a moment he just stood there, thin and hunched over, not allowing himself to turn around. When he at last took a couple of steps, he tripped over a corpse. Samson made his way around the body, but then an awful roar again assaulted his head, pouring like molten tin into the hole that had been his ear. He pressed his fist against the bleeding wound, as if trying to plug it shut, to block the noise that had burst into his head. Then he started running. He was simply running away, but it happened to be in the direction from which he and his father had come, toward Zhelanska Street, where he had been born and raised. Amid the general roar, he made out individual gunshots, but these didn't stop him. He ran past confused, aimless townsfolk, all of them staring blankly, and when he felt that he could go no farther, that his legs were giving out, he spotted a large sign above the door of a 2-story house, Dr. N.N. Vatrukhin, specialist in diseases of the eye.
Hi, my name is Kira Josefsson. I'm the translator of Ia Genberg's novel The Details, which is forthcoming on HarperVia this August. I'm here to read a short section of that novel. Right when I wanted a hurricane, there was a hurricane. I had longed to be swept away, to get entangled in something. And I had the good luck of getting exactly what I'd asked for. The bad luck of getting everything I thought I wanted. The good luck and the bad luck of having my prayers about passionate love heard. It was not even 4 months before the turn of the millennium, and I was on my belly in bed next to Christian in our apartment in Årsta, listening to the little baby campaign that was the culmination of our lovemaking. He worked as a party secretary in the parliament, where he wrote op-eds, speeches, letters from disgruntled citizens, material for motions, press releases, blog posts for members of parliament, meaning he was a man of campaigns and opinions, his own and other people's shifting opinions. Opinions of the future, opinions people weren't yet aware that they would soon hold. Opinions were the raw material of his craft, the soil from which the words grew. Today, he's the chief information officer at an environmental organization. I sometimes run into him at events, we have mutual acquaintances. But whenever he sees me, he just nods and looks the other way, as if he wants me to know the wound is still there. He was pushing the campaign for a baby, or 2, or 3, or 5, with one hand on my lower back and his nose in my hair, abetted by the fantasies stirred in basically anyone who hears the names of imaginary future children. Dante, Max, Wilmer, Maja, Nelson, Lova, Miranda, Berit, Margareta, Julia, Bastian, Bella, and though it might have looked like a game, Johnny, Conny, Ronny, Sonny, it was, in fact, a version of the lobbyist's smarmy little bowl of candies in the business fair booth, where it's so easy to pause for a moment, let yourself be flattered, start chit-chatting and joking around, let it slip that I love the name Frank above any other, and Billy, which made him laugh out loud. And now the topic was established, and all of a sudden we had a deal. From then on, I felt replaceable, kind of like his opinions, his co-workers, or employers, like a cog or an accessory to the big system that he served so eagerly in his jeans and brand name blazers, and which was comprehensively analyzed in the thick volumes that lined his bookshelves. But by the time that he tattooed my name around his biceps to prove the opposite, I was already on my way out. At that point, I'd already had sex with Alejandro in the backseat of a cab from Vaxholm. So in hindsight, it's hard to say which one of us was replaceable in the end. Alejandro hadn't been invited to join Zombie Woof, since he didn't have the requisite competence in any instrument. But legend had it that the night when he impulsively got up on stage and started moving to their music was the first time that the band felt complete. At some point, someone put a tambourine in his hands, but anyone who saw Alejandro on stage immediately forgot about the instrument that he was wielding. He was hypnotizing. You couldn't take your eyes off him, and he moved with such dedication that the word dance doesn't quite do it. It was more like he gave his body to the music, offering physical shape to the rhythm without any detours or stopovers. His movements were the music in a way that I had never experienced myself, and in a way he described after we started dating, with reference to the trips that he'd taken on psychedelics, where he'd realized that sound and matter are basically the same, that music has an architecture and vice versa, and that our senses, as long as we let them intermingle as they wish, are able to tell us much more than we can imagine. It would turn out that he did a lot of drugs, some of which I'd never even heard of before. The first time I saw him was at Fasching. The band was about to start playing when we entered the bar, and he had one foot on an amp as he talked to someone, but he turned his head and watched our group find a table, at which point our eyes met. I was out with Sally and some other people. We'd gone out, simply out, somewhere, anywhere, looking for music and beer, and we'd ended up at this smoky, familiar jazz club situated in between downtown and Kungsholmen. The others left to go elsewhere after an hour or so, including Sally. But I stayed, as if I was physically incapable of moving. Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Julia Sanches, and I will be reading from Gabriela Wiener's Undiscovered, which was recently longlisted for the International Booker and was published in the US by HarperVia and in the UK by Pushkin Press. I'll read something from the beginning and hopefully whet your appetite for more. The strangest thing about being alone here in Paris, in an anthropology museum gallery more or less beneath the Eiffel Tower, is the thought that all these statuettes that look like me were wrenched from my country by a man whose last name I inherited. My reflection in the display case mixes with the outlines of these figures with brown skin, eyes like small bright wounds, and polished bronze noses and cheekbones identical to mine, forming a solemn naturalist composition. A great-great-grandfather is just a relic in a person's life, unless the man in question took the not insignificant sum of 4,000 pre-Columbian artifacts to Europe. And his greatest achievement was that he didn't find Machu Picchu, though he came close. The Musée du Quai Branly is in the 7th arrondissement, right in the center of an old quay of the same name. It's one of those European museums that houses large collections of non-Western art from the Americas, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. In other words, a very pretty museum built on something very ugly. It's like someone thought that painting the ceiling with Aboriginal art and sticking a few palm trees in the corridor would help us feel at home and forget that everything in this place should be thousands of kilometers away from here, including me. I took advantage of a work trip to finally visit the Charles Wiener collection. When I walk into a place like this, I always fight the urge to claim everything in it as my own and demand it all back in the name of the Peruvian state, a feeling that only grows in this gallery, which bears my surname and brims with ancient anthropomorphic and zoomorphic clay forms from various pre-Columbian cultures. I look around for a suggested route, a timeline to ground the objects, but they're displayed randomly, in isolation, their labels vague or generic. I take several photos of the wall with the words Mission de M. Wiener, just like I did when I went to Germany and felt a dubious satisfaction at seeing my family name everywhere I looked. Wiener is one of those surnames derived from a place like Epstein, Auerbach, and Günzburg. Some Jewish communities adopted the names of their cities or towns for sentimental reasons. Wiener is a demonym that means from Vienna in German. Like the sausage, it takes me a second to realize that the M stands for Monsieur. Even though his mission was just your garden variety 19th century scientific expedition, at dinner with friends, I often joke that my great-great-grandfather was a huaquero of international repute. Huaquero is not an euphemism. It's how I refer to the looters who to this day remove cultural and artistic properties from archaeological sites. Huaqueros can range from cultured gentlemen to mercenaries, and these ancient treasures can end up in European museums or the sitting rooms of their elegant criollo houses in Lima. The term huaquero, meaning grave robber in Spanish, comes from huaca in Quechua. This is what people in the Andes call their sacred places, most of which are now archaeological sites or ruins. Community leaders and their funerary offerings are buried in catacombs at these sites. Huaqueros systematically invade them in search of tombs and priceless objects, and their incompetence is so great that they leave the sites a complete mess. These violations affect the reliability of subsequent research, making it impossible to reconstruct the past out of traces of identity and cultural memory, which is why to huaquear is a form of violence. It turns fragments of history into private property that accessorizes and dresses up the ego. Like art thieves, huaqueros are the heroes of Hollywood movies. There's a touch of glamour to their mischief. Wiener himself has gone down in history not only as a scholar, but as the author of this collection, erasing its real anonymous provenance with science as his alibi and the financial backing of an imperialist government. Back then, you just had to move some dirt around to call it archaeology. I wander the aisles of the Wiener collection among display cases crowded with ceramics. One catches my eye because it is empty. The label reads Mumie d'enfant, but there's no trace of a mummy inside. Something about this blank space is jarring. The fact that it's a tomb, the tomb of an unidentified child, the fact that it's empty, the fact that this tomb, which has been opened, reopened, and desecrated 1,000 times, is part of an exhibit that tells the tale of one civilization's triumph over another. Does denying a child their eternal slumber tell such a tale? I wonder if the museum took the mummy out to restore it the way paintings are restored, then left the case empty as a nod to the avant-garde. Or if the blank space is a permanent indictment of the mummy's disappearance, like the time a Vermeer was stolen from a museum in Boston and its empty frame left on the wall so it wouldn't be forgotten. I consider the theft, the move, the repatriation. Maybe if I wasn't from a continent of forced disappearances, where people are not only exhumed but buried in secret, the invisible body behind the glass wouldn't speak to me. But something inside of me keeps pushing ahead. Maybe it's because the label says that the missing mummy was from Chancay, on the central coast of Peru, from the department of Lima where I was born. My head wanders between imaginary graves, small, shallow holes of unreality. I thrust in my shovel and clear out the dust. This time my ink and profile mixes with nothing, and for a few seconds my ghostly reflection is the only thing in the glass. My shadow is trapped in the case, embalmed and exposed. Blurring the line between reality and photomontage, it stands in for the mummy, restores it, offering up a new stage on which to interpret death. My shadow, bathed and perfumed, organs scooped out, ageless, like a see-through piñata filled with myrrh. Nothing the wild dogs of the desert could eat up with a string.
Hello, I'm Louise Heal Kawai, and I'm the English translator of Sôsuke Natsukawa's The Cat Who Saved Books. I'm going to do a short reading for you today, slightly edited for time. Natsuki Books was a tiny shop tucked away on a street in the old part of town. It had a rather peculiar layout. Leading from the front entrance straight through to the back of the store was one single long aisle. Each side of this aisle was lined with towering stacks of bookshelves reaching all the way to the ceiling, and every shelf was crammed full of books. Retro-style lamps hung overhead, and their soft light reflected off the polished floor. At the back of the store, the aisle ended at a simple wall of bare wood. But when you entered from the front door from bright daylight, you had the impression that the whole place was much deeper than it actually was. Surrounded by walls of books, it felt like entering an endless passageway that disappeared into the darkness beyond. The image of his grandfather quietly reading a book under a lamp placed on the small desk was seared into Rintaro's memory, its lines drawn simply but with care, like an oil painting by an old master. Books have tremendous power. That was his grandfather's mantra. To tell the truth, the old man wasn't much of a talker, but when he got onto the subject of books, he would suddenly burst into life. His narrow eyes would crease into a smile, and words flew out of his mouth with passionate energy. There are timeless stories, powerful enough to have survived through the ages. Read lots of books like these. They'll be like friends to you. They'll support and inspire you. Rintaro stared around at the tiny bookshop with its walls of books. This space that his grandfather had created was the perfect refuge for a boy who tended to be something of a recluse. Rintaro, who had never really fit in at school, got into the habit of coming here and immersing himself in books, voraciously reading anything he could find on the shelves. In other words, this was Rintaro's safe place, a space where he could find shelter from the outside world. But now, in a few days, Rintaro was going to be forced to leave Natsuki Books forever. "Grandpa, this is messed up," he whispered. At that moment, he was brought back to reality by the cheerful ring of the old-fashioned bell that hung on the front door. Normally, it would mean that a customer had come in, but right now the door had its closed sign up. Outside, the sun had set, and beyond the glass door there was nothing but darkness. Deciding the bell had been a trick of his imagination, Rintaro turned his gaze back towards the bookshelves. "Kinda gloomy in here." The voice startled him. But when he turned to check the doorway, there was nobody there. "Pity. You got quite the collection here, but these books are just fading away in this old dingy place." Rintaro realized that the voice was coming from deeper inside the store. He spun back around to see nobody. Except, that is, for a tabby cat. It looked like your average ginger tabby, a rather large, plump cat with an orange and yellow striped coat. This particular cat had a distinctive stripe markings all the way from the top of its head down its back and tail, typical of a tabby, but its belly and legs were pure white. Against the dimly lit background, its eyes were two gleaming jade stones, and they were fixed directly on Rintaro. Rintaro watched as the cat flexed its long, graceful tail. "You're a cat." "Got a problem with that?" asked the cat. There was no mistaking it. The cat had just spoken. Although he was shaken, Rintaro managed to scrape together an ounce of calm. He shut his eyes tightly and counted to 3. Then he opened them again. A furry coat, bushy tail, 2 piercing green eyes, and 2 neat triangular ears. There was absolutely no doubt about it. It was a cat. The tabby's whiskers twitched. "Hey, kid, something wrong with your eyes?" it asked. This wasn't a creature who minced words. "No, Rintaro scrabbled around for the right thing to say. "My eyesight isn't all that good, but I can see that there's a talking cat sitting right in front of me." "Splendid," the cat said with a nod. It continued. "The name's Tiger. Tiger the tabby." There was nothing more bizarre than a cat suddenly introducing itself to you, but Rintaro managed somehow to reciprocate. "I'm Rintaro Natsuki." "I know. You're the new proprietor of Natsuki Books." New proprietor? Rintaro was confused. This was the first he'd heard of it. I'm sorry to say, I'm just a high school boy, a hikikomori, he explained. My grandpa knew all about books, but he's not around anymore. Not a problem, announced the tabby. My business is with you, the new proprietor. It fixed Rintaro with slightly narrowed eyes. I need your help. My help? Rintaro asked. Right, your help. Help with... There are books that have been imprisoned. Books? Are you a parrot? Stop repeating everything I say like some half-wit. The words landed like a slap across Rintaro's face. The cat, however, paid no attention to his reaction. I need to rescue those books. The jade eyes flashed. And you have to help me. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the reading.
Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to have with me today Professor Mola and Hilary Gardner. We are meeting to discuss the latest issue of Metamorphoses, the special double Catalan issue. So my name is Lara Mata. I am the Assistant Director of the Translation Center and the Editor-in-Chief of Metamorphoses. I start with our two guest editors who co-edited this issue. Guillaume Mola, would you tell us more about the process and how this issue came to be?
All right, thank you so much, Lara. And also thanks to Marianne Newman for organizing SANT JORDI USA and to the entire team that makes it possible. So let me start saying that this project has been a very rewarding job that required a great deal of dedication. We always like to promote Catalan culture, so I highly value the work of translators. And I want to think that this project gave me the opportunity to use this experience editing Catalan literature, reviewing and writing, right, and tackling the challenges that arose during the process. As for the editorial process, so we had a rolling acceptance policy. We reached out to our colleagues, students, translators in the US, Europe, and the rest of the world, really. People with whom we had worked in the past for activities at UMass, inviting them to participate as contributors or help spread the word. And we began to receive submissions. Our contributors are from the US, England, Ireland, Spain, Catalonia, New Zealand, etc. And first we looked for received works that fit the criteria of the issue. Basically, the criteria were having high quality translations of contemporary Catalan literature written in Catalan, of any literary genre, and that had not yet been translated or published in English. So once the texts were peer-reviewed, we began the dialogue between the reviewers, the contributors, and this back and forth exchange lasted for weeks, but this ensured the quality of the work. Then, once all the texts were in the master document, we continued with the revisions, and we also discussed among ourselves, right? Because we were talking about several linguistic, stylistic, formal questions. We discussed poetry. We were discussing the possible double meaning of words in the original Catalan text, verifying the accuracy of the translation according to the edition we could use, etc., etc. So yeah, after this, the texts were sent in PDF format to the contributors again for the final revisions, and our work as guest editors was done. We wanted our issue to be coherent in its content, with texts preferably from all Catalan-speaking territories. We are featuring 22 authors. Many of them are from Barcelona and the Girona regions, but they are also from the rest of Catalonia, the Balearic Islands, the Valencian community, Andorra. So yeah, we were trying to offer diversity in terms of geographies, but also in terms of generations, genders, genres. And this is despite being necessarily a limited and very partial selection, because all the translations that appear in the issue come from our call for submissions. So yeah, as I stated in the introduction, included in the issue, this selection is born from a particular time and moment, but I believe it's also a demonstration of the quality of the universal appeal of contemporary Catalan literature as an integral part of the global literary landscape. You'll see that the texts are arranged as a to be read as a panorama of contemporary Catalan literature, spanning from 1899 to the present. We didn't want to offer a textbook, but we wanted to offer a journey, right? Reflecting an idea of evolution of language, of styles. And we also wanted to appeal to new audiences, because Catalan literature, we think that always offers a classic to rediscover, or new voices that deserve to be heard. And with this intention, our issue showcases both established Catalan authors and young authors who have never been read in English before. From Marcelina Moragas Ginart and Luisa Denise Reverter to Laura Hortensi and Anna Gas Serra. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again, and well, heartfelt thanks to all the contributors, translators, reviewers, peer reviewers, for their collaboration. They're giving voice to Catalan literature. They love Catalan, which is a historically marginalized language, and they deserve all of recognition.
So I want to now turn to our other guest editor, who is also a translator herself. And would you tell us more about your journey with this publication, and also your dual role, being a translator and an editor for this issue?
Yes, definitely. Doncs, bon dia. Gràcies, Lara, i a tots, for letting me join Guillem and the great team at UMass Amherst and the Translation Center on this sort of inaugural issue of Metamorphoses, as hosted or in the Translation Center now going forward. So that was very exciting for me. I actually am returning to Metamorphoses from the special Catalan issue in 1997, which was the last time this was done. So it was a wonderful idea to try it again and see what happens. And we started with the idea of looking for texts that reflected contemporary Catalan literature. So that was what our call for submission said. But meanwhile, you know, during the pandemic and afterwards, there were a lot of really great initiatives helping translators work and collaborate together. There was an advanced Catalan workshop through the British Center for Literary Translation, hosted by Peter Bush and others. And that's where many of our I met a whole host of our contributors in this issue, and they generously sent texts that they were working on. And also at the same time, Charchelul was featuring different authors, and in particular, our colleagues at the University of Chicago and Harvard University hosting an online book club, Café CATALÀ. And that is where, again, some more of our authors, such as Bello Lead, and translators Samantha Mateo and others, where I met and were able to sort of continue collaborating. So when we began looking at the issue, our first text was actually the story that Peter Bush translated, La Mare Balena, by Victor Català, and it seemed like, well, great, let's start. It goes back a little bit before what we were thinking contemporary, but let's start with one of the greats of Catalan literature, and let's start with a woman's voice. That was very important to me. And I'm very proud that I believe among the translators and authors, there's a very good balance of men and women contributors, both. And then also because I have mostly been working in translating theater for Sala Beckett, Obrador Internacional de Dramaturgia, which hosts an online website called Catalan Drama to make texts of contemporary Catalan playwrights available in English. I knew for certain that I wanted the issue to also include theater. So we have 2 theater translations that also highlight women. One is the work called Donas que Parlan, translated by Elena Igarteburu, who was at University of Massachusetts as well. And that theater piece features some of the voices of the Spanish Civil War, which is one of the themes that runs through the issue. And then a piece that I translated by Lara Diaz Quintanilla, who is a playwright and performer very active on Catalan television and the stage, and many projects that she has going on. So basically what we started with this story from Victor Català, thinking that would be the opening of the issue. And then one of the translators, Richard Huddleston, sent us two poems that were even earlier. And we ended up using those as kind of the opening voices. And it was very exciting. They're kind of recuperating voices of 19th century women poets. And when I say 19th century, and Guillaume will correct me as well, I wanted to say that for lack of a better way of organizing the issue, we decided just to start with the author's birth date and see how it came to be or what it would look like. And in doing that, that's how we came to the current order of the text. And it has just an amazing variety of story, essay, 2 book reviews, an overview of the literary scene in Andorra, as well as art by 2 of the authors featured, Agustí Cabruja, his sketchbooks, as well as his notebooks from exile in Mexico, and then Manuel Bauchali, who did the cover, whose piece we ended up using as the cover art. So I feel like, as Guillaume mentioned, it's an enjoyable journey through different visions of Catalan literature, both contemporary and also how some of the greats, as I would call it, are being revisited today by translators.
And for you, especially Guillaume, being the director of Catalan program, and you're being a translator of Catalan, you're immersed in the culture. But for our audience, sometimes having an issue dedicated to Catalan literature was pioneering already. Although it's not a textbook, I bet Guillaume also uses some of these texts in the classroom. We had the graduate student Emilia Jaeger work on the final version. So there is potential here that we can tap into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As Hilary said, right, we are featuring 2 fin de segle poets, let's say fin de segle, right? Marcelina Moragas, Lluís Denis, thanks to Richard Huddleston, and also thanks to Hilary. And technically, we're including a work from the late 19th century, but we are kind of following the concept of contemporary literature that is often followed in Catalonia. So as Joan Fuster does in his essay, Literatura Catalana Contemporánea, for example, which covers from the period from modernism onwards, right? So I think this issue is going to be very useful for our classes, for our colleagues, for translators, and for all the readers, English speakers who love Catalan literature. So I'm really glad that that we were able to be the guest editors of this special double issue.
And I was privy to some of the debates and discussion, conversation. It was not, although you're making it look like an easy journey and a straight, everything came out serendipitously. I know a lot happened behind the scenes in the selection process and the discussion and the writing of this beautiful introduction. It was very enlightening for me also to learn more about Catalan literature and to have it neatly gathered like this in a special issue on a special occasion of the first issue to come out of the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And I hope our contributors will continue to bring submissions to Metamorphoses because about Catalan literature. We can feature a special place for Catalan literature and Metamorphoses, and I hope we will get opportunities to collaborate again, like the beautiful events we've had on campus. Thank you both for accepting this task, for becoming the guest editors for our special double issue. It was an adventure, and we're very proud of the result. I hope also people around the world will be able to acquire this issue and read literature in translation, Catalan literature in particular. Thank you very much.
This is Marianne Newman. I am the director of the SANT JORDI USA Festival of Books, Roses, and Dragons and the Arts. And I am thrilled to be here today with Angelos Gregori, a good friend and a great poet, whose works I have translated for Metamorphoses, the extraordinary special double issue of the magazine issued by the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and they have a special double issue of Catalan literature, which I highly recommend. Angelos Gregori is a Valencian poet from the town of Oliva. She received her licenciatura from the Universitat de Valencia in literary theory and comparative literature, and her doctorate from the Universitat de Barcelona. Angelos is a cultural administrator who is renowned for establishing the Poefesta, a poetry festival in her hometown of Oliva that draws poets from all over the world. Angelos is the author of 8 collections of poetry since 2003, a selection of which are Nova York, Nabokov, and Bicicletas, Great Trees Fall, from which we will read today, and her latest, Jazz, which just won the Josep Llompart Award for Poetry from the review Cavall Verd, one of the most prestigious awards in Catalan poetry. The jury of underlined from Jazz its expressive beauty, the subtlety with which it treats its topics, the spontaneity and precision of a singular metrics that leads one to a remarkable musicality, the complexity of the ideas, and the suggestive images of counterposed elements. Today, we are going to read from her previous collection, Great Trees Fall, which shares the characteristics that have been underlined by the jury of Cavall Verd. And we're going to start reading. Angelos, would you like to say anything to the people here?
Bon dia, Marianne.
Bon dia.
Jo realment és que estic encantada i emocionada també de participar en aquest Sant Jordi a Nova York i sobretot el regal que m'has fet amb les traduccions del llibre de quan els grans arbres cauen, que realment ha sigut com no donar-li una doble vida, sinó més, no? Posant la teua veu i les teues paraules als meus poemes.
Well, I should say that this was a spontaneous translation because Angelos gave me her book. And as soon as I started reading it, I started translating it. And I thought, oh, I'm going to translate a couple of poems. And I didn't stop until the book was over. So I really love this book. And I'm thrilled to have brought it into English. So I think we should start read. You read from the. We'll alternate, so you can hear the Catalan and then hear the English. And please, Àngels.
Perfecte, jo començaré llegint un poema que du per títol Poètica. Estimar és dibuixar mapes. Cada paraula necessita el seu paisatge i escriure és inventar estances. No dir la pluja, sinó banyar-se. No el precipici, sinó caure. Com dir, sinó, que habitar-te és cremar-me.
I've never heard you read it before. That's wonderful. Poetics. To love is to draw maps. Each word requires a landscape, and to write is to invent rooms. Not to say rain, but to swim. Not the precipice, but the fall. How to say otherwise that to inhabit you is to burn.
Pronoms. M'acoste a tu i sé que aquesta copa també pot algun dia trencar-se, que ballar damunt el vidre és la dansa més amarga. M'acoste a tu i et sé conclusió i bandera i tot el vent nou que exigeix una vela. Treu els ells i el vosaltres i no parles de tu i de mi si no és per dir nosaltres.
Pronouns. I draw near you, and I know this glass may also break one day. I know dancing upon glass is the bitterest dance. I draw near you, and I know you are finale and flag and all the new wind a sail requires. Enough with the them and the all of you, and speak no more of you and me, except to say we.
Un mapa, recordant Elizabeth Bishop. Al lloc on guarde més preguntes que respostes, on deixe que els altres acaben per mi les frases, has arribat de sobte i has obert aquesta porta. Oblidant enrere cendres i certeses, duies amb tu el blau del vol i el dubte. Se'ls imposa o poden els països escollir els seus colors? Parlaves d'equilibris i seguies amb els dits el curs d'un riu en les proporcions d'un mapa. Més delicats que els dels historiadors són els colors dels cartògrafs. I jo buscava l'excés del vermell en tota la por que cap en un volcà, l'oasi de la diferència i la reacció de les metàfores. Havent escollit el camí d'extraviar-te, sempre hi ha una desembocadura que dona al mar.
This is one of the poems where you expressly see how Àngels Gregori has drawn from and incorporated into her poetics the work of the tradition of American women poets and poets in general. Later you'll see Maria Mercè Marçal also is present. So, a map, remembering Elizabeth Bishop. There where I store more questions than answers, where I let others finish my sentences, you all at once appeared and opened that door. Leaving behind ashes and assurances, you brought with you the blue of flight and doubt. Are they assigned, or can the countries pick their colors? You spoke of equilibriums, and your fingers traced the course of a river on the scale of a map. More delicate than the historians are the mapmaker's colors, and I sought the excess of red in all the fear that fits into a volcano, the oasis of difference, and the reaction of metaphors. Having shown the path of getting lost, there is always some estuary leading to the sea.
Bunkers. Quan el cambrer tanca el bar, pensa en tu, perquè després de trobar-nos sempre algú havia de netejar. Quan remene els glaçons en un vas, pensa en tu, perquè així va ser el nostre amor. Un túnel de cristall en un país de fred.
One of the things I love about this poem is how it goes from humor to tragedy in two very small, very brief verses. Banker's Bar. When the waiter closes up the bar, I think of you. because after we were together, someone always had to clean up. When I swirl the ice cubes in my glass, I think of you, because this was the way we loved, a crystal tunnel in a cold land.
Presències. Alguns cops m'agrada la teva absència. D'altres, inventa un idioma per esperar-te. També hi ha peixos que al mar moren de set.
Presences. Sometimes I enjoy your absence. Other times, I invent a language to wait for you. Some fish also die of thirst in the sea.
Bitllet de rodalies. El nostre amor tampoc no servirà demà. M'ho diuen els amics, ho escolta a la ràdio, a la premsa sovint en parlen. L'eternitat mai dura fins a l'hora d'esmorzar. Cada cop que accepte el desig d'un cos nou que se m'ofereix als ulls, només penso en carnisseries i trens. Això és just el que voldria. Seure i mirar per la finestra un paisatge de cossos nus, com els aparadors dels carnissers.
A local train ticket. Our love will also be pointless tomorrow. My friends say so. I hear it on the radio. In the papers, they often discuss it. Eternity never lasts until breakfast. Each time I greet the desire of a new body presented to my eyes, all I can think of is butcher shops and trains. This is just what I would like, to sit and look out the window at a landscape of naked bodies, like the window of a butcher shop.
Port d'Amsterdam. Hi ha 3 tipus d'amor. Els que et tornen a una ciutat, els que et fan rellegir un llibre i els que et recorden un altre amor. De totes les ciutats, els llibres i els amors, llegir Eliot al port d'Amsterdam, repetint el nom del primer amor.
Port of Amsterdam. There are 3 kinds of loves. The ones that take you back to a city, the ones that make you reread a book, and the ones that remind you of an earlier love. Of all the cities, books, and loves, to read Eliot in the Port of Amsterdam, repeating the name of one's first love.
I per acabar llegiré un poema que du per títol Verbs transitius i porta una cita de Maria Mercè Marçal que diu «Drap de la pols, escombra, espolsadors». Els supervivents d'aquesta guerra demà hauran tornat a l'oficina. La vida, aquell tràmit militar, ara es combat entre sofans i rentadores al voltant dels mobles de la cuina. Les antigues lleis dels mapes no deixen marge per l'error. Imaginar-te, esperar-te, besar-te. 3 formes diàries de saber que en tu recau l'acció d'aquesta lluita.
Transitive verbs, with a quote from an epigraph from Maria Mercè Marçal, dustcloth, broom, feather duster. The survivors of this war will be back in the office tomorrow. Life, that military formality, is now embattled between sofas and washing machines around the kitchen furniture. The ancient laws of maps leave no margin for error. To imagine you, to await you, to kiss you. 3 daily ways of knowing that the action of this struggle falls upon you. Well, thank you, Angels, for this beautiful collection of poems, and I can't wait to do jazz. Fins ben aviat, maca.
Hi, my name is Albert Lloret, and I'm an associate professor of Spanish and Catalan at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. For this Sant Jordi, I would like to bring to your attention the English translation of Victor Català's 1921 novel, A Film, 3,000 Meters. Victor Català, for those of you who don't know her yet, is the male nom de plume of a woman, Catherine Albert. This book, A Film, tells the life of Nunat, an orphan who is on a quest to find his parents. This quest brings Nunat from his native Girona to Barcelona, where he takes a series of factory jobs as he leads one of the city's most successful criminal gangs. The novel tells a series of parallel plots, too, that intersect with the main one and are all led by an array of female characters. The novel is full of intrigue and irony as the author plays with serial pulp fiction tropes of the time. Now I would like to do two things to entice you, to urge you to read this book. The first one is read a short answer by Peter Bush, who's the translator, the English translator of Català's novel, who answered to a question in an interview in which I asked him what would be his opinion on the fact that this book had, the original Catalan book had remained unpublished, out of print as a single novel for over a century, and when it was republished in 2015, it sold out in a week. And in answering to this question, Peter Bush makes great points on the reasons why you should be also interested in reading this book. So let me read you Peter Bush's answer to this question, and then I would like to read a short paragraph, a couple of paragraphs from the novel. This is Peter Bush's answer to my question about the popularity, sudden popularity of this novel. When it was published as a serial fiction, readers would have perhaps felt its focus on factories, city life, and class conflict more immediately. In the wake of the Russian Revolution and the end of the First World War, Barcelona and Catalonia experienced a surge in strikes, demonstrations, and direct action led by anarcho-syndicalists, many of who believed that social revolution would be achieved through a series of general strikes. In the first two parts of the novel, Nunat and his friend Paroi, who work first in Girona and then in Barcelona as locksmiths and engineering workers, read radical newspapers and pamphlets and believed that the, quote, present era is the epoch of the working class, end quote. As Nunat, the main character, ascends from apprentice, shop worker to foreman and manager, he retains the Bakuninist language of emancipation from the bosses and transforms it into the linguistic soundtrack to this personal vendetta against his would-be wealthy parents and his factory bosses. When he fights with his last boss, Señor Amoneda, he knocks him to the ground and proclaims the anarchist slogan, "No more masters." When it was published in book form during the Primo de Rivera dictatorship in the 1920s, critics simply panned it, and Victor Català never wrote another novel. I think its success on republication was partly down to the energy of the publisher, Maria Buigas, at Club Editor, who recognized the novel's pioneering narrative technique and nuanced portrayal of Catalan society. Readers and critics in the 21st century are also much more responsive to the various feminist threats in the novel's subplots and enjoy Català's gallery of female characters. The dynamic of the intrigue has perhaps shifted. Readers now are gripped by the interplay between Nunat's rise from factory apprentice to mafia boss, the series of women drawn into his milieu, and the ironic, quirky style. So much for Peter Bush's explanation of why the sudden success from 2015 on of this almost forgotten classic. And now let me read you a couple of pages of the moment in which Nunat, his main character, and his friend Paroi arrive in Barcelona and go for a stroll in one of its most emblematic avenues, La Ramblas, so that you see what's the atmosphere that the action in this novel is portraying. Nunat and Paroi had fallen asleep like little angels. Nunat so deeply that God knows when he'd have woken up the next morning without a nudge from his friend. a good douse of freezing water from the faucet, 4 gulps of coffee that Auntie had boiled out for them, and Peroy asked, "Are we off, lad?" "We're off." They each took their little pack of food. Luna took both their tools, and they left the house. Once on the street, Peroy, who was heading to cross Carré Hospital, thought better of it. "You know, today is the day to celebrate. We should celebrate your arrival. Like proper gents. We'll all take the tram." They caught the first one going up La Ramblas. On board were only 2 countrywomen, with bags and baskets. A fair-haired young girl with a shawl and a middle-aged man who looked like an office worker. 1 or 2 other trams went up and down, still entirely empty, but signs of life and renewed activity were beginning to spread like oil stains along city streets, just awakening from their nighttime slumber. And La Ramblas was where life was mainly happening. Lukewarm rays of sun were dispersing the misty haze over the horizon, and birds chirruped cheerfully before flocking toward the distant plain. Busy workers rushed to and fro like pistons, gripping blue or yellow kerchiefs full of provisions, alongside shop assistants and pan pushers, many also carrying their lunches wrapped in newsprint. Florists quickly emptied their cellars to fill dew-damp tables, and bunches of flowers scented the air. Cheery, brawny ragamuffins in the street-cleaning brigade began to flourish their brooms and spout nonsense to female passerby. Long poles over their shoulders, house painters nonchalantly took up their positions in the entrance to Bucaria, shooting the breeze with broad-backed, slow-moving porters. Cooks descended, white aprons gleaming like walking clotheslines, then huddled, clouding the entrance to the market, and seamstresses, delicate and stylized like living figurines, promenaded light and graceful like swallows in flight. Newspaper boys shouted morning headlines that echoed down the streets. Horses pulling vegetable carts neighed as they lined up from Carré Hospital to Lethem, and all you could see in the workshops, whose doors opened like eyes on the blink, were apprentices diligently engaged in their daily tasks, and window cleaners, the misting glass caged in shop windows. And over and above everything else, like a shower of holy water, chiming church bells sonorously summoned the faithful to Mass, while a loud hoot of distant steamer pierced the air. This is a beautiful description of the beginning, the first hours of a workday around Carré Las Ramblas in the late 1910s. I hope this has interested you. I hope that these words by the translator and this paragraph elicits or encourages you to read a film by Victor Català. It's great fun. There's a lot of action. There's humor, and I hope you take this opportunity in this Sant Jordi.
Hello, everybody. This is Enrique Muñoz Mantas, and here with me I have Lourdes Magné. We are gonna work for the Sant Jordi USA event. We are gonna have a conversation about our experience translating for the METAMORPHOSES Catalan special issue. Lourdes translated along with Wayne Cox, Miquel Martí Pol, and myself, Agustí Cabruja Iauquet. First, we are going to have a little conversation about our experience, and afterwards, along with Wayne Cox, we are going to read the original text in Catalan and then our translation in English. Well, Lourdes, what were the biggest challenges you encountered when translating this particular text? Were there any cultural or linguistics aspects difficult to convey in English?
Hello, Enrique, and thank you for organizing this, and thank you for Sant Jordi USA too. Well, Wayne and I have been translating Miquel Martí Pol for many years now, and we had the pleasure and the honor to be able to meet him and be able to talk to him about his poems, and if we had some difficulties, which that was an advantage. But in general, there are three kind of challenges when translating his poetry that I think the translator has to also accept. One is that there is ambiguity, the ambiguity in his poems, and you need to negotiate. You know, sometimes when you're translating, you want to clarify. And I think you have to be respectful of the ambiguities that the poem has and make a pact with yourself. And that's something that Wayne and I have had to negotiate, me being Catalan, and then he himself is a poet. So, you know, there could be that tendency of trying to, you know, clarify it. So the difficulty of keeping up those ambiguities. Also the challenge, since it's a poem, to respecting the form of the poem. And he writes in 11 syllable lines, normally endecasyllables. And that's also, you know, important in his poems. Another challenge is that English has many more monosyllables than Catalan or any Romance language. So that's something, you know, when you translate the form of the poem and the lines, that's something that it creates also a challenge there, because one word that's a long word of 4 syllables in Catalan, maybe in Spanish, in English is just 1 or 2. So you have to work on that. And so keeping the rhythm, but at the same time, recognizing what's the best word in English. And then maybe the other challenge is recognize the autonomy of the culture, you know, that he comes from the Catalan culture, and there are some things that are very understood in our language and in our culture, but maybe it's not as much understood in English. Could be an object, it could be, you know, some food or some kind of like gesture that it's much more common than in English. So those are the 3, you know, challenges and the negotiation with those. What about you, Enrique? When you
in my case, I did not translate poetry. Then in my case, it was easier regarding Lourdes and Wayne's challenges. But it's true that I found some barriers with the culture, because some of the poems recall memories from the past, from exile, because August Cabruja was exiled to France and then to Mexico. And then from the concentration camps in France, he writes about people that he met when he was young, or famous people that passed away during the exile. And then he uses some toponymical words or some places, some buildings that for the American reader or not Catalan reader, let's put it that way, it would be difficult to understand, or maybe some traditions or some words, as Lourdes said, like, for example, the river in Girona, no? Where he was born, Oñá, Rio Oñá. Then you have to make the sentence fluent for the reader, just to make them understand that that text is talking about something specific in Catalonia, not something general. That said, I try to translate the text. They are like vignettes, like little short stories. They are shorter than a normal short story. Then I try to keep the essence of the author and what he wanted to say to the readers in the Catalan original version.
Thank you. And so we're thinking about another question that was interesting, which is in what extent you feel that you capture the essence of and the tone of the text and of the writer that you are translating, because obviously I think that when you translate, you get so much into the text. So how have you ensured to maintain the author's voice and style in English?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Lourdes. Yeah, then this question is a little bit connected to the first one. I try to maintain the tone and the essence of the author in all the texts I translated, but specifically in those where he was writing as a first-person narrator, because he was talking about the pain and the suffer that he had during the exile. And then he went to the poetry side of his narrative, but it's not a poetry, it's more text. Then I tried to respect the words in the text. If they were two adjectives talking about feeling, I kept both of them, even though in English they seem too close in the translation. Then I tried to give another aspect of the word just to keep the word in the text, not remove it because in English it was repetitive, for example. And then also when he was recalling someone's message, because sometimes he quotes someone, then I kept the same, even though it's not the author itself, but I kept the message that he wanted to send to the reader. And then I tried to be as truthful as possible for the reader to understand what Agustí Cabruja wanted to send to the reader. What about you, Lourdes?
Well, and I think you were successful. I was reading them, you know, a couple of days ago, and I think you can feel that that, you know, there is a voice definitely of your author, and because there are several of them in Metamorphoses, by the time you go to the third or fourth one, you're getting that voice. So yeah. And I thought some of the things probably I felt like, oh, that must have been difficult there, you know.
Yeah, it was.
For us, one thing about Miquel Martí Pol, he's really a universal poet, like his themes, and we have done several readings of his poetry in different venues, and the truth is that his poetry arrives to everyone, and so I would say that the importance for us is that Miquel Martí Pol would be Miquel Martí Pol in English, that, you know, that you would read that poem and you, that the person would get his voice and, you know, most the voice and also, you know, his feelings, his message, and then that it reads like him, even though it's in English. And one anecdote that I can share is that the first time that Wayne, because I had the book Quaderno de Vacanzas, Vacation Notebook, that we translated the whole book, that I had it with me and it would travel with me. And he said like, oh, you know, maybe, you know, you could try to read to me in English. And first I thought that it would, no, Miquel Martí Pol is in Catalan and it's hard. And then we started doing it. It was amazing to see that it could. So that's basically that it remains him. And so it's very important for me when we translate together that there are some things that they are remain the same, but the rhythm of the poem, it's important too. He also uses a lot of alliterations that work very well. It's like this cadence in the poem, and that makes that rhythm, and so that's also something that we've tried as much as possible to reproduce.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe that both experiences brought a different layer to those authors, keeping their essence, because we didn't want to bring a different Agustí Cabruja and a different Martí Pol, as you were saying. We wanted to keep them as an international figure as Miquel Martí Pol is, and as a forgotten author as Agustí Cabruja is. We wanted to keep their names and then their work. Then I think we did a great job. I read Miquel Martí Pol poems, and I felt every word, every sentence, every verse was fantastic. Then thank you for your job and Wayne's job. And right now we are gonna invite Wayne to this room, and then I will read both in Catalan and in English to share with you, spectators, our work. We hope you like it.
These translations are translations that you did for the Metamorphoses issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are also for like the poems that we submitted. These were also new translations for us too, and we chose it's from the book After All, Després de Tot, which is the last book that he published before his death in 2003. It's published in 2003. So those were translations for the Metamorphoses and yours as well. So
yeah, same thing. It's a thing that we did specifically for the Metamorphoses translation. It's not something that has been published in another book. Lourdes and Wayne, they work with Michael Matipol, different poems. But in my case, it's my first time translating Agustica Bruja because everything has been published just in Catalan and Spanish. Yeah.
Hello, now we're going to proceed to the readings, and we're here with Enrique Muñoz Matas and Wayne Cox and myself, Lourdes Mañé, and we're going to start with the author Agustica Bruja, and Enrique is going to read from Terra Nostra 2 vignettes of the ones that he has translated. And Enrique, first he's going to read the Catalan and then his translation into English. Looking forward to it, Enrique.
Thank you, Lourdes. My first version, it's Una lletra de Xile. I will start reading Catalan first and then translate into English. Un bon amic, exiliat a Xile, on s'ha establert amb la seva família, muller i fills, m'escriu una lletra plena d'enyor i de nostàlgia. Entre d'altres coses em diu: m'enyoro com el qui més es pugui enyorar. M'enyoro a tota hora. I bé puc dir que quan estic més bé és quan parlo de la terra. En el centre català hi ha un mapa de Catalunya. Davant d'ell passo estones i més estones. Voldria tornar a casa nostra. Vull tornar a caminar per aquells caminets dels meandres de l'Onyar i seure en algun recer abrigat de la tramuntana del Puig de Montilivi. Vull tornar a veure les majordones de Girona i els mossens dels barris alts, el pont de pedra, les voltes de la Rambla i la Devesa. Beatitud, subtil misteri de la natura, que ajuda a vell morir. Al compàs de les hores lentes i desmaiades del dia, les fulles i flors del jardí. And then my version, my translation, it's a letter from Chile. A good friend exiled in Chile, where he has settled with his family, wife, and children, has written me a letter full of longing and nostalgia. Among other things, he recounts: I feel as homesick as I can get. I miss my homeland at all times, and I can say I only feel better when talking about our land. At the Centre Català, there is a map of Catalonia. I spend time in front of it, and many times I think of how much I would like to return to our homeland. I want to walk those paths again along the meanders of the Onyar River, then sit on some spot sheltered from the north wind coming from the mouth of Montilivi. I want to see again the housekeepers in Girona and the priest of the upper quarters, the Pont de Pedra, the voltas a la Rambla and the Devesa. Oh, bliss, the subtle mystery of nature that sits in a peaceful passing to the beat of the slow and faint hours of the day, of the leaves and flowers in the garden. This is my first translation, and then the second one in Catalan is: en aquest exili ha fallat tot, fins l'amistat. Un home plora, i plora allí, sol, en un racó, allunyat dels homes. Les seves llàgrimes expressives, amargues, silencioses, aboquen als nostres ulls una imatge de tragèdia, esfereïdora i punyent, com les nostres nits sense esperança. Té una lletra als dits que acaba de llegir i és una mà d'amic i company que es fa enrere, Li nega unes engrunes de pa i una mica de conhort, una teranyina de llum en la cel·la enreixada i tenebrosa del seu exili. Ara murmura absent, adolorit. En aquest exili ha fallat tot, fins l'amistat. And now I'm going to read the English version of this fragment. In this exile, everything seems to have failed, even friendship. A man cries, and he cries alone in a corner, away from other people. His tears expressive, bitter, silent, evoking our eyes an image of tragedy, as shocking and heartbreaking as our hopeless nights. He holds a letter between his fingers, which he has just read, and mentions a friend and a companion who has stopped helping him. He denies him a few breadcrumbs and a little solace, a spider web of light in the barren, gloomy cell of his exile. Now he whispers, absent and in pain. In this exile, everything seems to have failed, even friendship. Now Lourdes and Wayne are going to read 2 poems from Miquel Martí Pol, first the Catalan version and then the English version. The floor is yours.
The first poem is Després de tot, after all in English. Després de tot. Després de tot, encara queda espai per repensar la vida i convertir-la en un àmbit molt més silenciós, a l'abric dels inhòspits desgavells i les inevitables maltempsades. Perquè el secret és que no hi ha secret, i els ritmes i les pauses són la cara potser oculta del temps que no hem viscut, mentre fèiem projectes i ens jugàvem el passat i el futur en inefables futilitats en posat circunspecte. I ara què ens queda fora del recel i les mancances? Què compartirem amb la gent que estimem i que ens estima? La fosca complaença dels secrets o la riquesa absurda del misteri? Res d'això i tot això, perquè el subtil mirall discret que ens encén la mirada és el no-res que sempre descobrim sense voler, tossuts i agosarats, després de tot, després de cada cosa.
After all, there is still enough time to take stock of your life, turning it into a space filled with calm, sheltered from uninvited chaos and inevitable misfortunes. For the secret is that there is no secret, and the rhythms and pauses are perhaps the hidden face of time we haven't lived while we were busy making plans, staking our past and future on ineffable details with prudent dignity. And now, what is left beyond fear and want? What will we share with those we love and those who love us? The dark pleasure of secrets or the absurd wealth of the unknown? None of this and all of this, because the subtle, discreet mirror that lights up our eyes is the nothingness that, unyielding and bold, we always discover by chance, after all, after each and everything.
The second poem is Aturai. Generosa en silencis, ara penso la tarda que ha passat i m'hi retrobo. No em vull ni massa lluny ni massa prop dels horitzons de mi que reconec i puc tocar amb els dits de la memòria. Mot rere mot, els versos configuren un àmbit de preguntes i misteri que algú, potser llunyà i desconegut, desxifrarà sense ni jo saber-ho. Serà l'instant del gran acompliment i un vent suau dispersarà les ombres perquè l'espai que quedi sigui net i obert a tota mena de propòsits. Camins enllà, el temps farà camí i jo, mig complagut, mig resignat, ho contemplaré tot des d'allà on sigui.
Pause. Filled with its silences, I reflect on the afternoon that has passed and find myself. I don't want to be too far, or too close to the horizons that I recognize and can touch with the fingers of memory. Word after word, the lines compose a space filled with questions and mysteries that someone, perhaps distant and unknown, will decipher without my knowledge. And in that great moment of fulfillment, a light wind will clear the shadows so that the space that remains will be clean and open for any purpose whatsoever. In the distance, time will travel its path, and I, half pleased, half resigned, will consider it all wherever I am.
Moltes gràcies, Wayne. Moltes gràcies, Lourdes.
Moltes
We
gràcies a
hope
tu.
we hope people that are watching this video enjoying the Sant Jordi this year.
Yes.
And we hope you liked our reading and our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gràcies. Feliç Sant Jordi.
Hello everyone, my name is Oriol Ponsatí Murlà. I teach ancient and medieval philosophy and cultural history at the Universitat de Girona in Catalonia. And I'm thrilled to talk to you today about a review that I recently published in METAMORPHOSES, in this special issue, astonishing special issue devoted to Catalan literature that has been published in METAMORPHOSES by the Translation Center of the University of Massachusetts and the Institut Ramon Llull. It is a review about a book of a Catalan writer, Joan Fuster. In Catalan, the title in Catalan of this book is Consells, Proverbis i Insolències, and has been translated, wonderfully translated by Marianne Newman as Final Judgments and published by Fum d'Estampa Press. I would like to share with you some 2 or 3 aphorisms of the more or less 1,000 aphorisms that we can find in this book by Joan Fuster, and to read them both in Catalan original version and in English translation, the English translation by Marianne Newman. Well, let's start with the first aphorism. It says, "Everything we say and write is a commonplace. Otherwise, we would not understand one another." In Catalan, that sounds like "Només diem i escrivim llocs comuns. Altrament, no ens entendríem." Well, this aphorism encapsulates Fuster's recognition of the shared conventions and common language that underpin communication. Despite the richness of individual expression, there's a commonality in our use of language that facilitates understanding and connection. Now, on to a second aphorism. It's always useful to have one obsession or another. It serves as a distraction. In Catalan, és útil que tinguis sempre una obsessió o una altra. Això et distraurà. Here, Fuster offers a right observation on the human condition. While obsession may seem burdensome, Fuster suggests that it can serve as a welcome distraction from life's other challenges, providing focus and direction amid uncertainty. Finally, let's consider this third aphorism. Books are not substitute for life, but life is also no substitute for books. In Catalan, it sounds like els llibres no supleixen la vida, però la vida tampoc no supleix els llibres. This aphorism reflects Fuster's belief in the complementarity of literature and lived experience. While books offer insight and enrichment, they cannot fully substitute for the richness of life itself. Conversely, life experience inform and enrich our understanding of literature, creating a symbiotic relationship between the two. In Final Judgments, Joan Fuster invites readers to ponder life's complexities through succinct and thought-provoking aphorisms. Marianne Newman's translation skillfully captures the essence of Fuste's wit and wisdoms, making the aphorisms accessible to English-speaking audiences. As we celebrate St. Jordi's Day, let us remember the power of literature to inspire reflection and foster connection across cultures. And let us continue to explore the works of writers like Joan Fuster, born in 1922 in Sueca, the Valencian community, whose words continue to resonate with readers around the world. Thank you for watching, and happy St. Jordi's Day to all.
Hello, everybody. In celebration of San Jordi, I'd like to present two poems to you by the renowned Catalan poet, Narcís Comadera. They come from a copious anthology that he put out. It was actually published in 2014, though since then he's done a number of books. But I have two favorite poems that come from this book, so I'd like to present them to you today. They both express the poet's profound love for his people. One is a lullaby. Lullabies are normally soothing, soft, to put children to sleep. This is hard, cynical. However, the contrast between the softness that a lullaby should be and the harshness of this poem makes it all the more powerful and impressive. And it does end, however, on a more positive note. The other poem is a poignant poem, a more tender one, however, does also express a sad recognition by the poet of the danger that his beloved language is in. Let me begin by the lullaby. I'm going to read the first verse in Catalan so you can get a feeling of the songfulness, the rhythm of the original language. After all, a lullaby is supposed to be a song. Cançó de bressol. Dorm, dorm, petita meva, patria meva, terra natal. Non, non, pels rossignols emudits d'un bel bocage ja no canten, i les aigües gemades baixen brutes dels cànicos simbòlics davant, com se sol dir, d'una total indiferència. Now in English. Sleep, sleep, my little one, my country, my native land, there, there. The nightingales, silent in their beautiful groves, no longer sing, and lush waters descend, dirtied from the symbolic Canigo Mountains, before, as one was wont to say, total indifference. Sleep, my people, sleep, while the means of mass information eat the little that's left of your spirit, after 40 years, after 30, the first of treachery, the others of treachery and neglect. Sleep, my native land, sleep. Your inept leaders, too impotent to resist, play at doing nothing with their ridiculous power and say nothing. Stay warm in bed, napping inside the immense yawn of mediocrity. Sleep, my little one, sleep. While we raise happy-go-lucky temples to lying, we ourselves become no more than lies, attentive to the obscene winking and the perpetual emptiness of what the communicators tell us. Sleep, my country, sleep. While your teachers who should be instructing your boys and girls sink, taciturn, into melancholy, into the darkest interior sea, and your future runs dry. Sleep, sleep, my little one, my country, native land, there, there. While your language is corrupted by the growing illiteracy of its speakers, by the I don't know, I don't care, by the sad giving up to the facile, by the growing idleness that deprives you of spirit. Cadenza. May the mountains and the lowlands sleep with you, and the flock of villages and cities. May the trusting coves sleep with you, sheltered by high cliffs. May the glaciers and the mountains scree sleep with you, and the trees in the forest, the broom and the honeysuckle. May the autumns and springs sleep with you, winters and summers, the stars in the sky above. There, there, my little one, my country. A few of us, less and less each time, the last of us watch over you. The other poem that I want to share with you is called in Catalan Quatre Paraules, in English 4 words. I'd like to read the whole poem to you in Catalan. It's not that long. And after all, it is in celebration of the Catalan culture and its language. Quatre paraules. Mig en somnis un àngel se m'apareix i em tempta. Escriu, fos un poema. Vull trèmol de sobre. Vull dormir al son dels justos o al son dels pecadors. M'és igual. Vull dormir. Però ell insisteix. Te, diu, 4 paraules. Món, país, llengua, amor. I afegeix, gairebé ja t'he fet el poema. Jo li dic, si escric món, bé hi hauré d'afegir desastres, fam i guerres. Si escric país, ja entro al territori d'absurd, de l'essai i dels fantasmes. I si escric llengua, veus? El dolor em trenca l'ànima i ja no puc escriure. I em diu, tu escriu amor pel món i pel país, i per aquesta llengua que es mor i et trenca l'ànima. Veuràs que encara pots fer aquest i 1000 poemes. It's a really beautiful poem. I just love it. Let's hear it in English. 4 words. Half dreaming, an angel appears to me and tempts me. Write, make a poem. I want to get rid of him. I want to sleep the sleep of the righteous or the sleep of sinners. It's all the same to me. I want to sleep. But he insists. Take 4 words, he says. World, country, language, love. And he adds, you've almost written the poem. I tell him if I write world, I'll of course have to add disasters, hunger, and wars. If I write country, already I enter the absurd territory of being and ghosts. And if I write language, do you see? The pain breaks my heart, and I'm done with writing. Then he tells me, write love for the world and for the country and for this language that is dying and breaks your heart. You'll see, you can write this poem and 1,000 more. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed hearing these poems as much as I have reading them to you.
Buon Sant Jordi i en l'any del drac. Happy Sant Jordi and in the year of the dragon. It's always good to get both point of views, knight, dragon, maybe even the damsel. And instead of me just talking to a screen, I'm super lucky to be talking with Mireia Vidal Conta. Hola, Mireia.
Hi, Maria Elena. I'm so glad to be invited to this wonderful event and to share with all of you this so special Catalan day, full of books and roses. That is it, full of peace and love for a while. Thank you so much in advance.
Thank you. This is going to be great. So I'm going to start with a very brief introduction to Felicia Fuster for those that maybe don't know about her. And Felicia Fuster was born in Barcelona in 1921. She moved to Paris when she was 30. It was a very turbulent time, the early 50s, and she lived there until her death in 2012. She exploded out of the blue into the Catalan poetry world at the age of 63. And she was part of the cultural world. She was always a bit of an outsider. And perhaps for that reason, she's not as well known as I feel she should be. And maybe Mireia also agrees. Mireia, what is the role of poetry? And specifically, do you think Felicia Fuste's poetry has a role in the world today?
Because poetry is the food of our souls, the bed of our insecurities, and a way to understand and to love them. If you don't have a soul, you don't need poetry. Then, when you have begun its long way, you can be someone who eats every kind of it, an easy one perhaps on a comfortable way, or you can be someone that chooses a kind of poetry that could be really a pretty big challenge for you in many ways. This is the kind of poetry that Felicia Fuste gave us, that perhaps I can connect with other American poets like Lois Gluck and Sexton or Joey Graham. Felicia could be, for instance, the fourth in this group. What do you think, Maria Elena?
I think that's really, really exciting. And I love the way you put it. I would add that for me specifically, I feel that in this world where so many things are difficult, and I did a video last year for SANT JORDI USA, and I said the same thing. And this year, things are even more heart-scalding and terrifying for so many. That I feel that Felicia Fuste's voice, because of her life, she carried such a huge burden of grief and solitude, and she never lost hope. This was the hope born in the conviction that through writing, we have the keys. We have the keys to solve intractable problems. We have the keys to denounce injustice. And, you know, maybe we have the keys to defend ourselves from dragons or to become friends with them. I discovered Mireia when I was reading about Felicia Fuste. Mireia, could you tell us about your experience with Felicia?
Well, when for the first time her complete poems were published in 2010 in Catalonia, I was surprised of her quality and her international level, so far away from the complex that normally exists in the way of write of a poet from a language without a political state behind, or as we say, a minority language. She shines as an international one because she has an universal mentality, probably due to her biography, by my point of view. So then I talked about this particular with my colleagues, writers, poets, and critics, and most of them didn't know her. So I was the first person in the world that organized the first tribute about her and her poetry, and I decided to invite to all the poets that I knew then to celebrate and to say her poetry in Barcelona. She still was alive. She lived in Paris then, and people who knew her said me she knew about the event and she was proud of it. She died 2 years after, and a lot of Catalan poets knew her poetry thanks to this event, and the great book, of course. Afterwards, her poetry has always been for me a mirror and a motivation for my inspiration and a way to write, with this mentality that no poet is small, neither a language.
Wow, Mireia, thank you. So we're going to tag team reading poems, Mireia in Catalan and I in English. And these are poems that are in this special Catalan issue of Metamorphoses, published by University of Massachusetts Amherst. Metamorphoses is the journal of the 5-college faculty seminar on literary translation. And the guest editors were Guillem Moya and Hilary Gardner. Thank you so much, Guillem and Hilary. This is an amazing amount of work and really formidable result. So we'll tag team reading. Shall we start? Mireia.
One of the obsessions of Felicia Fuster is the concept of time as a prison and as something no one can control, quite related with Virginia Woolf. Lluny. Deu ser molt lluny. Cap ressò no m'arriba, tot i les pedres que esmicolo perquè rebrostin les teves últimes paraules. Pregunto en va a les veus que rodolen on és la punta del teu nord. Em fong com un cartró sota d'un xàfec i ja ni les roderes no m'inventen. Quan les dreceres dels teus ulls, com un besllum, em tornen dintre la tarda dels meus núvols. La tardor em crema, perquè sé que es fa tard, d'un tard d'aquelles hores que s'esquincen amb els rellotges interdits als somnis. Envia'm, si és que pots, un fil per recosir-me i deixa que t'invoqui. El cel ja se m'estripa, la lluna se'm desdiu, l'ombra de l'ombra va cinglant-me i ja en eclipsi giro dins l'òrbita d'un temps sense sortida.
Wow. Far. You must be very far. No ringing reaches me, not even from the stones I crumble, for new buds to burst on your latest parabolas. In vain I ask the rolling voices, where is the focus of your north? I melt like cardboard in a downpour, and not even the wheel ruts beckon me when the shortcuts of your eyes glimmer and bring me back inside the afternoon of my clouds. The autumn burns me because I know it's getting late. That late of those hours torn apart by clocks forbidden in dreams. Send me, if you can, a thread to re-sew me and let me summon you. Already the sky slashes me. The moon denies me. The shadow of the shadow holds my course, and already in eclipse I spin into the orbit of a time with no exit. Felicia translated from and to Japanese. And when you do that type of deep labor, it changes your poetic voice, especially for someone like Felicia, who was so open to experimentation. In fact, this influence is throughout her poetry, and her last book is a collection of haiku, and we'll be reading 2 haiku from that book. Mireia.
El teu imperi, el blau, el sense límits. Jo, una mirada.
Your kingdom, the boundless blue, the without limits. Me, a single gaze.
Sanglotes cendra, perquè no em fas. Miracle. Boira, que et bressa.
You sob ashes. Why don't you make me miracle? Mist that cradles you.
One of the most mystic poems of Felicia, with echoes of a new era inside her poet's eye. He deixat d'estudiar. He deixat d'estudiar l'epigrafia del meu cant fosc. He obert els ulls. He abandonat, per la claror, la sorra. Estenc la mà perquè els murs es desbridin, que s'aixequi el cobalt dels cels enderrocats, els temples, la terra tota, les remors i aquell perfum del cos perdut. Ambre, pell en pell, les evidències.
I gave up sand for light. I stopped poring over the epigraphy of my dark song. I opened my eyes. I gave up sand for light. I stretch out my hand to unleash the walls for the cobalt of wrecked skies to rise up, temples, every bit of land, murmurs, and that scent of the lost body, amber, skin against skin, the evidence. So the last poem that we're going to share from Felicia today is not just a journey, a voyage, a quest, but also an alchemical transformation. Very 20th century, but also timeless. And it is as archetypal as knight chased by dragon chases damsel.
I quasi era llaüt blanc. Ara us escric aquests propòsits amb el paper enfilat a la glacera del pensament que un ham distreu i amarga. Peixos les mans, com un enigma em desconcerten. Us dic, acabo d'estremir-me amb el gran nus escorredor d'una tempesta. Les espurnes em teixeixen la bufanda i els ulls. Tinc les plomes cremades, la barrinada d'una estranya victòria m'ha desfet. Visc en exili damunt de les paraules. Comptador esvalotat i pneumàtics de brega. Sóc un taxi embalat que no s'atura. Les rodes em fan roderes. Fràgils els sentits em confonen. Els revolts, l'estiu i les pujades. No vull llacís que em premi. Cridaré. Ignorada. Provaré de passar pel sabor dels camins i pel blavet del mar. No sé si el món m'espera amb una agulla per descosir-me la sang i veure si encara el desafia, si encara crec en Déu i en el lleixiu dels núvols. Però avui tot és clar. Deixeu que em desenllaci del silenci i digui al cel, afina'm. Un llapis sense pes se'm posa a escriure. Sé que no vull que es perdi en circumloquis ni a l'envins de desert. I no deserto. Escric. I em travesso. La pàgina és la pell. El temps que el temps no em dona.
And I was almost a white sailboat. Now, I write you these intentions on paper, sharpened at the glacier of thought that a hook distracts and sours. Fishes like hands, they baffle me, a conundrum. Friends, I tell you, just now I quaked at the storm's great slipknot. Sparks weave my scarf, my eyes, my feathers singed. I'm undone by the blast and scuttling of a strange victory. I live exiled on a stack of words. With the fare counter riled up and quarrelsome tires, I'm a runaway taxi that never stops. The wheels spin ruts in me. My brittle senses mix up the U-turns, the summer, the climbs. I want no screw press to flatten me. I'll roar. Unnoticed, I'll try to slip along the soap of the paths and through the sea's bluing. I don't know if the world waits, needle in hand, to unsew my blood, to see if it's still defiant, if I still believe in God and in cloud bleach. But today, all's clear. Let me unstrap myself from stillness and tell the heavens, tune me. A weightless pencil sets to writing. I know I don't want it lost in twisted tangents or in desert alembics. And I'm no deserter. I write and I lance myself. The page is the skin, the time that time won't give me. Wow. So, thank you, Mireia, for this. And as noted already, Mireia not only lives and breathes the poems of Felicia Fuste, but is herself an award-winning poet. So I've asked her to share some of her poems. And you will see that one of us is reading poems from a roof in beautiful Villanova, wearing high literary fashion, short sleeves, while the other is freezing in front of a bush that may be burning in the outskirts of New York City. I think you'll be able to tell the difference.
Us porto uns poemes d'Orlando Natural relacionats amb Felicia Fuster. Van encapçalats per una cita de la mateixa Felicia. Qui m'ha ferrat? Qui m'ha fixat damunt els ossos a cops aquesta pell de dona, que tot i despullant-me m'ha vestit? Felícia Fuster. Que murmuren unes dones la subtil delicadesa de xondires als seus llavis, aquesta melodia.
These poems of Mireia all come from Orlando Natural, published in 2010 by Labreu. And each of these poems starts with an epigraph of a poem of Felicia Fuster. Who has clad me in iron? Who has fastened onto my bones, strike by strike, this skin of woman, that even stripping me naked has dressed me? Felicia Fuster. Whisper the women, that subtle finesse awakens on their lips this melody.
És difícil serpentejar equilibris i trontollar precàriament amb un sol pam de vida. Felícia Fuster. I jo dic, en aquesta paraula explica'm breument aquella remor, si em mates, és difícil.
It's hard to weave along footholds, to wobble, shaky, within a hand's breadth of life. Felicia Fuster. In this word, tell me simply that hubbub, if you kill me, it's hard.
I, qui, què soc? No ho veieu? Traduint Cristina Rossetti. Art de referència, mica en mica dona, besos al revés, nascuts amb pell girada del 19.
And who? What am I? Friends, don't you see? Felicia Fuster. Translating Cristina Rossetti. Art for the ages, with time confers, inside-out kisses, born flip side of the hide of the 19th. So thank you so much, Mireia, for these poems and for participating in this SANT JORDI USA.
Thank you so much, Maria Elena, to give me this wonderful opportunity to transform a small language on universal poetry. Have a nice SANT JORDI for all of you. Books and roses every day.
Well, thank you again. And those of you listening, don't forget to order your copy of Metamorphoses. It's a formidable selection, goes from the beginning of the 20th century to today, and with the translations into English. Happy SANT JORDI. Get your roses, get your books, and don't forget, words are the key. Writing is the key. The page is the skin. Thank you so much for listening.
Ramon Llull is a well-known name in medieval Catalan literature and one of the most extraordinary figures of European culture. In the 13th and 14th centuries, a time when European cultures flourished in vernacular languages, Llull was a brilliant figure who developed a unique cultural, intellectual, and spiritual project in his context. In this short presentation, I will give you some hints about who really was this character. He was born in 1232 in Mallorca, an island in the Mediterranean Sea next to the Iberian Peninsula, that had recently been conquered from the Muslims by the Crown of Aragon, a set of territories with its capital in Barcelona that occupied a large part of the Mediterranean coast of the peninsula, and that which were mainly Catalan-speaking. Llull belonged to the first generation of Christians born in this island. He is traditionally considered the first great author of Catalan literature, a father of the Catalan literary language, because he created himself a linguistic model and an extensive work just at this time when the Romance cultures were beginning to produce important works in vernacular languages and not only in Latin. His most famous and translated work, maybe, is the Book of the Lover and the Beloved, which is part of a more extensive novel, which is called Romance de Bast e Blaquerna, among others. However, Llull is much more complex character than a literary writer. During his long life, he wrote about 265 works, covering all the fields of knowledge of his time, from the sciences to theology. Llull was, above all, a lay intellectual who sought to carry out a great project of spiritual renewal of universal scope, of great originality and ambition in the 13th and 14th centuries. He himself explains in the Vita Coetanea, an autobiography written at the end of his life, that after several mystical experiences as a young man, he received through divine revelation an intellectual system that he called the art. Well, the art is, in fact, a philosophical system that aims to rationally describe reality from the simplest to the most complex, which is God, and at the same time, the art offers a method or a path for the spiritual realization of human beings. Llull applied the art to the sciences of his time to demonstrate its universality and to transmit to his readers the art, convinced that it was a means of renewing the world. This is why the art has a missionary will and was the tool by which Llull started an innovative inter-religious dialogue with Islam and Judaism. And while he received some social support from some European monarchies, the university, and the church. And he created a structure to copy, translate, and disseminate his work in different languages, Catalan, Latin, but other languages around him, like Occitan, French, Arabic, Italian, Spanish. Well, the art also aimed to reform the Christian world. And since Llull's main mission was to communicate it, he spent his whole life looking for ways to reach readers of all social classes. In doing so, he discovered that literature was a very powerful tool for that. As he did with sciences, Llull applied the art to the writing of literary text with a didactic purpose. Thus, by recycling the main literary traditions of his time, such as troubadours, chivalric, aphoristic text, or allegorical romance. He created a new, very original literature that indirectly transmitted the art to the readers. An example of this new literature is the Book of the Lover and the Beloved. It is a short and very beautiful work that narrates the mystical experiences of its protagonist, who is called Blakerna, and through this metaphor of the lover and the beloved, which symbolically represents the relationship of love between the humankind and God, Llull teaches us an art of love, or an art of contemplation, which we can understand as a method of meditation with which the reader can initiate by himself this spiritual transformation. Beyond this book, Llull continued to write about the lover and the beloved in more than 20 works throughout his whole life, and he came to construct a fiction on the subject, literary and mystical at the same time, of great depth and beauty, and which reflects his spiritual project. Well, Llull's great contribution is the creation of a literature that is not only an artistic product, but also an instrument for inner transformation. This has a lot to say to us today, because it shows us that literature, as a symbolic language, is not only to communicate and acquire knowledge intellectually, but also allows for inner experience and the development of wisdom. Well, I will finish by reading a small fragment from the Book of the Lover and the Beloved, which is written as a collection of short text to be meditated on during the day. The original in Catalan says as follows. Cantaven los aucells l'alba, e despertàs l'amic, qui és alba. De los aucells feniren llur cant, e l'amic morí per l'amat en l'alba. And the English translation, which is done by Robert Hughes, who is a well-known translator of Llull text, says this. The birds were singing the dawn, and the lover awoke, who is down. The birds finished their song, and the lover died for his beloved at dawn. Well, this text hides a meaning to be contemplated and discovered. So I will leave it for you to be considered and to find this meaning.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Mara Lethem, and this is Paul.
I'm Paul Wask.
And we're here to talk a little bit about his new translation in English coming out of Napalm al Cor. In English, it's called Napalm in the Heart. And I wanted to ask Paul to just give us a brief overview as an introduction before we read.
Okay, so we are going to talk a little bit, and then we are going to read some parts of the novel. This is a novel about two guys who live in a place we don't really know, in a time we don't really know, and something has happened that we don't really know what has happened. But
Very easy to translate.
Yes. But something related to like an occupation, a militarized zone, something like that.
Post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, we could say something like that. And at some point, like, these two guys send each other letters to communicate. They are lovers, and at some point, one of them decides to search the other one, to go to the city where the other one lives, and start a journey, a travel somewhere, and we will discover what this travel means during, like, the novel, I guess. Is it right? Is it like that?
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
So we're going to read a bit from the beginning, and we'll start with the Catalan.
Okay, so the novel is built with different, like, languages, I would say. There are, like, some parts which are descriptions, something like that, and then there's these letters between the two guys, and there are also pictures, there are also some drawings. So there are lots of different languages that create, like, a new language, which is the novel itself. And I'm going to start reading the beginning of the novel, which says this. L'exhumació. La neu s'havia fos damunt la terra que bategava com un marbre calent i els tolls d'aigua bruta bullien. Brotaven les primeres dàlies i el temps s'estenia escombrant les darreres piles de massa congelada que s'acumulaven als marges de camins i carreteres. Hi havia un arbre altíssim que germinava els talls tendres on s'arremolinava el pugó, avar, xuclant-li la saba. Cada dia era un pou de vida que s'il·luminava des del fons fins a la superfície i vessava la llum en fora. Aclocàvem els ulls per poder veure-hi i ens saludàvem des de les finestres amagant els cossos rere la cortina. Només vèiem les mans i excepcionalment guaitàvem els jardins descuidats. A les voreres s'estorava una capa de pol·len fosforescent que semblava la pols que es deixa a les cantonades per espantar els gossos. Cadascú tenia un rusc sòlid i regalimós de pròpolis als arbustos de l'entrada. Estornells i pit-rojos hi acudien i devoraven les abelles, piulant, i duien els becs melosos a les cries que cridaven als arbres. La pau no era una sensació, era un lloc. L'herba que ens devia arribar als genolls, les corredisses dels animals que intuíem només pel moviment que es dibuixava entre la malesa. Bestioles que venien del bosc i es passejaven per l'asfalt i allataven les cries als nostres porxos. Vaig llegir en algun lloc que s'havien vist llops, en bandada senyorejant entre les cases. En Boris m'ho va dir més tard. He vist uns llops enormes baixant del turó. Va ser a la primera carta que em va enviar.
The snow melted on the land that throbbed like a hot marble surface. Dirty puddles boiled. The first dahlia leaves sprouted up, and time swept away the last frozen piles gathered along paths and roads. There was a tree, a very tall one, that sent out tender shoots where aphids circled greedily, slurping its sap. Every day was a well of life illuminated from the depths. We closed our eyes so we could see, and greeted each other from the windows, hiding our bodies behind the curtains. We could only see each other's hands, and on rare occasions glimpse the derelict gardens. A layer of phosphorescent pollen accumulated on the cracked paving. It looked like the powder left on corners to scare off dogs. Everyone had a hive in the bushes by their front doors, solid and dripping with propolis. Starlings and robins came and devoured the bees, chirping, and took their honeyed beaks back to their babies calling from the trees. Peace was not a feeling, it was a place. The grass that already reached our knees, the animals racing by, seen by us as mere movement sketched amid the brush. Creatures that came from the forest and walked along the fractured road and nursed their young on our porches. I read somewhere that wolves had been seen in packs, striding among the houses. Boris later told me I saw enormous wolves coming down the hill. It was in the first letter he sent me.
Nice.
So now we'll read the first letter too.
So this is the letter that the main character sends. The main character is also the narrator, and he sends this letter to Boris. And it says: Boris, Boris, ha tornat l'home rapat a casa. Jo venia de l'hort i l'he trobat assegut a taula. I m'ha semblat veure la mare al seu costat, petita, com si la seva arribada l'hagués encongit. Damunt de la taula, torrades i te. He alçat la vista. Somreien amb els llavis llargs. Sense dir res, he pujat a l'habitació. No l'he pogut mirar a la cara. Parlaven en l'altra llengua. La mare, amb els ulls ben estirats de contenta que estava, i aquell senyor explicant-li històries, i la meitat devien ser inventades. I ella se les creia i anava dient que sí amb el cap, mossegava trossets petits de torrada, fent que sí i que sí amb el front, escoltant les mentides i gola avall. Ara una mossegada d'això, ara una mossegada d'allò altre, ara un glob per fer baixar una altra mentida. Què putes en tenia, Boris, si no la parla mai l'altra llengua, si jo no l'he vista mai parlant-la? Ja és el tercer dia que ve. La primera vegada duia la pensió per a la Vita, però va dir que s'havia equivocat i havia trucat a la nostra porta. La mare al principi el mirava amb prudència i li parlava sense obrir-la del tot. Treia el cap pel tros de llum. Però van estar una bona estona xerrant i jo solament vaig entendre algunes paraules. La segona vegada, ja sense excusa, va aparèixer i van passejar pel jardí. La mare li ensenyava l'hort i les gallines, la vaca i la tanca rovellada que du al bosc. Reia mentre li assenyalava els arbres i les plantes i el turó, i ell assentia. I avui és la tercera vegada, i ara és la mare la que diu que sí amb el cap sense parar. No m'agrada, Boris. Té els ulls com els d'un animal, i camina com un animal, i fa olor d'animal. I jo odio els ulls altius, com els seus, les llengües mentideres, les cames que corren cap al mal i els homes que fan que es barallin els germans. Els odio. I va pelat, com hi van tots, perquè així els ho diuen i ells ho fan, que només saben obeir i després van manant arreu i diuen a la resta què han de fer i què no han de fer, perquè els qui els manen no els contesten mai, no s'hi atreveixen. Però ja ho saps, Boris, que després van per tot ordenant amb la metralleta com si fos un altre braç. Segur que eren així, també, els que van fer allò als teus pares, Boris, n'estic segur. Segur. Et deixo. Aquí la vida segueix amb el ritme de sempre, però no té res de lenta, que és d'una fredor freda, com si el món continués congelat. Et penso i des de la finestra de la mare miro l'habitació de les rates. Quan t'enyoro, hi torno. L'habitació de les rates, la nostra. Cada vegada es m'entra la por que no ens tornarem a veure mai més, com si corrés el risc de no tornar a ser feliç al teu costat i necessito mirar-la. T'estimo com s'estima aquells que fa molt de temps que van marxar o com aquells que encara estan per venir. Els qui mai no has vist o mai no han existit. Boris. Teu? Per cert, Boris, avui ha mort l'avi.
Boris, dear Boris. The man with the shaved head is at our house again. I was coming in from the vegetable plot, and I found him sitting at the table. I thought I saw Mother beside him, small, as if his arrival had shrunk her. On the table there was toast and tea. I looked up. They were smiling with tightly pressed lips. I went up to my room without a word. I couldn't look him in the face. They spoke the other language. Mother's eyes narrowed as that man told her fabricated stories, but she truly believed them and kept nodding her head, taking small bites of toast, nodding yes, oh yes, with her forehead, listening to his lies and swallowing it all. A bite of this side, then a bite of that corner, now another sip to make another lie go down. What the fuck could she possibly understand, Boris, when she never speaks that other language, when I've never seen her speaking it ever? This is the third day he's come. The first time he was delivering Vita's pension, but he said he knocked on our door instead, by mistake. At first, Mother looked at him warily and only partially opened the door as she spoke to him. She stuck her head out into the shaft of light, but they chatted for a long time, and I could only understand some of their words. When he showed up again, with no excuse that second time, They strolled through the garden. Mother showed him the vegetable plot and the hens, the cow and the rusty gate that leads to the forest. She laughed as she pointed out the trees and the plants and the hill, and he nodded to her words. Today is his third visit. Now Mother is the one constantly nodding. I don't like him, Boris. He has eyes like an animal, and he walks like an animal, and he smells like an animal. I hate arrogant eyes like his. I hate lying tongues, those that rush towards evil and make brothers fight each other. I hate them. And his head is shaved like all of them. That's what they're told to do, and they do it. They only know how to follow orders. And then they go around bossing other people about and telling them what they should and shouldn't do, because they never talk back to the people ordering them around. They don't dare. But you know that already, Boris. You know how they bark orders, pointing their machine guns. I'm sure the ones who did that to your parents were just the same, Boris. I'm sure of it. Dead sure. I should leave. Life here goes on with the same old rhythm. It's never slow, but it's a cold, cold coldness. Like the world is still frozen. I think of you, and from my mother's window I look out at the rat room. When I miss you, I go back there, to the rat room, our room. Sometimes I'm scared we'll never see each other again. Scared I risk never being happy with you again, and I need to be in that room. I love you the way we love those who've left long ago, and those who haven't yet arrived, those we've never seen or who've never yet existed. Boris, you, yours. P.S. Also, Boris, my granddad died today.
Great.
So I wanted to take this time to ask you a question, since in this first letter, part of the novel is epistolary. This subject comes up of this language, this other language. We've got a smaller language and a bigger language. And, well, first I wanted to ask you what that means to you.
Well, you have heard this so many times, I'm sorry, Maya, but anyways. When I started writing this novel, I was like, so when I start writing, I don't say what I want to talk about, you know. I don't plan the novel. I don't plan like the topics of the novel. I don't write about my interests. I write about things that really touch me somehow, you know. So when I started writing this novel, I didn't have like lots of things clear, but I had some intuitions, and one of them was that I wanted to talk about languages, because it is something like so important for me, also for my culture, like Catalan people, of course, but it's something that is very important, and I have always been thinking about that, you know, but I don't feel that is something that concerns everyone, or that everyone is interested into that. So I was like, why is everyone like so concerned or talking so much about other political stuff, very important, of course, like feminism, anti-racism, racism, but why do we forget languages so much, if languages are like the most important thing that we have, because it's the way we can relate to other people, we can name the world, and we can live somehow, right, in community, and also we can just like have imagination. Without language we don't have it, right? So I wanted to write about that, but I didn't want to write an allegory about Catalan, a language, or I didn't want to talk about like the situation of my own language. I wanted to talk about something which somehow is kind of universal, which is the idea of linguistic oppression, in the sense that we all have a language and we all have suffered of someone telling us how we have to talk, you know, how we have to speak. And of course this struggle can be just individual, like in your family, someone tells you cannot talk like that, you have to talk this other way. And for other people it is a community, a common problem, you know, something related to an identity, to a community, to a political global struggle for more people than not just yourself. So I think one of the main questions or the main problems of this novel is language. Like what happens when two languages share a space, a world, and they have to live together. And what happens with that? It is also a question about community, which is your community. It is like the people that with whom you share an oppressed community. Are they the same like you just because you share an oppressed community? Or they can also hurt you, even though you both are from an oppressed community and you have like an enemy? So all these questions, I think they are questions that somehow appear in this novel, and these are some problems that this narrator, the main character, finds during like his life, or the piece of life that you can read here. Yes, I think that would be the answer. Yeah.
Well, you can tell that Paul is a poet originally, and I think this was your first novel.
Yes.
But I have a question about how this idea of language has been received in translation, because I know you've been promoting this in a lot of different countries, and I'm interested in the idea of because the way that we talk about language here in Catalonia is very different than how it's talked about in America or the UK, and obviously we're forcing you to speak in English, and so we're oppression. But I think there are some things that English speakers really struggle to understand. When you feel your language is endangered, how you respond to that, and obviously not everyone. But as a poet, your medium, and a prose writer, your medium is language itself. But so how did those ideas within the novel translate in I know you were in Slovenia, which I always think of Catalan as my secret language. Like if I'm on the subway in New York, I speak Catalan, right? And you speak fast enough and you feel pretty safe. But I met a Slovenian woman, so she said, "No, Slovenian's the real secret language."
Yes. It's funny because I was traveling around the Balkans with different translations of the novel, and it was for me shocking how in other countries the people who know what Catalonia or Catalan is, because not everyone knows that, think that we are kind of heroes. And that's so funny, because Catalans have like this idea of themselves that they are like so little, and that they are always suffering and struggling with their culture and their language. And then a lot of people, when I was in Slovenia, when I was like in Croatia, in Serbia, they thought, wow, Catalan people, you really do like things with your culture, and you take care of your culture and that stuff. So it was really interesting to see like how other people see you, which is always an interesting thing to explore. And also something that they all said, and I guess this is good because it means that the translations are good and I don't understand them, because I don't know those languages. They said that the language was poetic, which when people say that, I don't always understand what they mean, because what do you mean with poetic? That there is like rhythm, that there are like a lot of images, like a lot of I don't know how to say it. Yes, like images, like landscapes, atmospheres. What does poetic really mean? I don't know, but I somehow agree, because when I started writing this novel, I had only written poetry before, so it was the first things that I wrote in prose were like the beginning of the novel. So I understand what they mean when they say that it's poetic, because I guess that it means that there is something about my way approaching language which you can feel it here. In fact, like for me, when I write novels, when I write prose, I don't feel like I'm doing something different than writing poems, you know? So for me, this is somehow a long poem, you know, or a broken poem that there is like somehow a story that you can follow within or through this poetry, right? But I wanted to ask you, like, how was it for you, like, to translate? I know that you have also translated a lot of literature which is very poetic and that they really work with language, like a lot of Catalan authors that you have translated do that. But I wanted to ask you if there was like something that for you was special or singular when or more difficult, or more, I don't know, that you struggled doing something during the translation, because we haven't talked about that before.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's difficult about this book, or that was difficult for me translating it, was that, you know, the narrator doesn't have a name. I don't know what country we're in. I don't know what planet we're on. I don't know what time period we're in. There's very few defined things. And as a translator, I mean, it made me realize how much if I sort of know, oh, I'm in Peru, I can kind of look at maps, I can Google, I can, I can do research, but there was no way to research this novel at all. I mean, I could write to you, Paul.
Yeah, and ask me questions.
What's this? And, so that helped a lot to kind of gradually make my way into the world of the novel. But it's such a unique world that, as I say, it really made me realize it felt like a crutch now to know, oh, this is set in Barcelona, or this is set somewhere, because until you really get into the world, it's hard to know what's going on.
But I think that's fantastic, because as a translator, I mean, because of course we all know that translators are writers, and when you translate, you are not just translating, you are writing, you are creating. We all know that. But for me, I think the same about readers. So I like to think readers as people who also write the novel with me, and I love the writers who make me write the novel with them. For example, I love Clarice Lispector, because every time I read Clarice Lispector, I have the feeling that she's saying, come with me and write this novel with me. And I love that, because it means that reading is a creative act somehow. And so I know that you are a writer, and you write when you translate, but I like to have this feeling that you also wrote this novel, like I think it's more clear than another translation. You don't have, I mean, I'm just saying that maybe that's not true, you will say now, but with other books, maybe when you translate them, you don't have the feeling that you are creating that much. But here it's true that you don't have there is a poem of Maria Mercè Marçal, a very loved Catalan poet, that she takes a thought from Hannah Arendt, which is called, which she said that it's important, I don't know, you will translate it, pensar sense baranes, to think without
crutches, you could say, or railings.
Yeah, so you don't have like anywhere to
grab onto.
Yeah. And I like that when you say that you had this feeling when translating the novel, because somehow you had to create a world. And it's beautiful to see that the world I had in my mind and the world that you had in your mind now collapse in the English translation. So I think it's beautiful, because I have the feeling that we wrote this novel together. We would have done it anyways, but more, I think, more now. Does it make sense what I say?
Yeah, but now we need our English readers to do their part.
Of course. Yeah, that's true.
This actually is the British edition.
This is the British, yeah.
So there's another beautiful cover of the US edition, which is coming out with FSG.
Yes, in August. This is going to be out in July, I think.
In July.
And with FSG in August. Yeah, beautiful cover too. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both beautiful covers. Thank you. Thank
So
you
thank you
everyone
very
at
much.
SANT JORDI USA.
Yes.
Another example of Catalan linguistic epic heroism.
Yes.
Yes, we made it all the way to the US.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mara.
Welcome to this conversation online at Sant Jordi in USA. I'm Laura Huerga, president of Catalan Pen, and I'm pleased to introduce you to the Catalan writers Marta Carnicero and Flavia Company. Welcome, Marta. Welcome, Flavia.
Thank you.
Thanks. An industrial engineering graduate, Marta Carnicero Hernán is an engineer and teacher. She has masters in creative writing from the Pompeu Fabra University. Her debut novel, El cel segons Google, The Sky According to Google, was published in 2016, followed by Conifers, in 2020. Conifers was the direct result of a stay at the Ledick House in Art Omi Writers at New York. Her third novel, Matryoshkas, was published to great critical acclaim in March 2022. Film director Pedro Almodóvar said, I read it twice. The last few nights, I've been taking notes on the book like I'm actually adapting it. Flavia Company is a writer and novelist. She develops her work either in Spanish and Catalan. She has a degree in Hispanic philology. She's a journalist, translator, teacher of creative writing, and lecturer. In June 2018, she embarked on a trip around the world that lasted 4 years. From that experience, she wrote her book, I No Longer Need to Be Real, which she wrote under the name Haru, one of the 3 heteronyms together with Andrea Mayo and Osamu. Her work has been translated into English, French, Portuguese, Italian, Polish, German, and Danish. She writes in the newspapers La Vanguardia and Ara. Okay. To start this conversation, we will listen to Marta Carnicero reading an excerpt of Matryoshkas, translated by Peter Bosch. Marta, please.
Yes, thank you. So this is the book. This is Matryoshkas. I wrote it in Catalan. It's translated into Spanish as well. I did it myself. And I'm writing the end of one of the chapters in the novel. We have the main character, Hannah, who remembers being in a prisoner's camp where women were repeatedly raped. It goes like this. You had even laughed in the camp, but you're afraid that to admit that will make what you went through seem less real, as if letting yourselves laugh would cast doubt on what they did on you. You also stand in judgment on the man begging on the market steps today, if on the way out you see him drinking a coffee at the bar, or even worse, smoking your money, the coins you gave him, that he, who claimed he was starving, opted to spend on some vice or other. Your pitiful contribution gives you the right to deprive him of his rights, however much you realize he can't do anything else. Hardship doesn't make you any less human. In that camp, where any animal would have been taken care for, being in denial made you feel alive, almost free. You thought about death, of course you did, but in the end, everything focused on immediate needs. The body gets tired, thirsty, trembles, is hungry, walks, throbs, and keeps breathing. In the camp, you clung to details to get through another hellish day. One woman only talked about washing her hair. Months after getting out, you kept clinging to whatever could help you to keep going. The fact you got through proved that Nina might be alive. Sometimes you even convinced yourself she'd escaped. The rest of the time, you kept trying to find her and give her a decent burial. You wanted to bear witness, to denounce what happened. All sides committed atrocities, but they wanted to eradicate you women. They forced you to give birth to their children. That's why they let you live. But when they're grown up, you'll be gone. They will have torn out your roots, and all that will be left are tender shoots. Those of you who escaped won't be going back. The land where you were born will be theirs, and those children, how many of them are siblings? Not related on the mother's side, but on the criminal side. Genocide is also about that, the possibility that siblings conceive without even knowing they are siblings. Years later, once they won't pile men's corpses and burn them, the victors now erected memorials. Winning the war was that, denying barbarism with a smile. You wait for your tram wondering if you did a good job, if your words achieved what you wanted. War, when talked about, is nothing. A couple of paragraphs in history books about individuals who have ceased to be people, individuals belonging to parties, ethnic groups, nations. A few lines in a book sprinkled with facts to lend credibility. Bombing, borders, armistices, battles. The word war can't convey war. The word camp can't convey camp. For you two, who'd never been in one before, it seemed an empty word at first, and that's why you were able to shelter there. A bombing, when you've never lived through one, is very little. 2 syllables, 7 letters, a mute word that has shed the screams, the horror, the filth, the blood. Thank you.
Wonderful, Marta. Wonderful. Could you explain a bit more about this work?
Yeah, sure. Matryoshkas is a novel that has 2 plot threads. And on the one hand, there's the story of a woman, Hannah, who suffered rape as a weapon of war. And on the other hand, we find Sarah, who's a teenage girl who lives in Barcelona. And the 2 stories come close to converging somehow. The most important thing for me during the process of writing this novel has been to work from sensibility in order to avoid falling into emotional pornography. Because I took care, I wanted at all times to skirt the wound without digging into it. And that's why I did not want to interview women who had suffered rape as a weapon of war, because asking them would have been have meant opening a wound that they had done a lot to heal. So that's why I had to work from empathy.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you very much, Marta.
Thanks.
Very interesting. Also, we need to listen to Flavia Compagne reading The Island of Last Trust, translated by Laura McGloughlin, published by Europa Editions. Please, Flavia.
Yes, thank you. So I'm reading an excerpt from the chapter number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Night has fallen. It is 2 o'clock in the morning. He is exhausted. He is cold and afraid. He hadn't been afraid while it was light. Seeing his body through the water helped him to be sure there was nothing worrisome nearby. The sea, when everything is dark, is like an immense animal with black skin moving restlessly as it sleeps and may wake up any moment. He has been swimming for hours with brief interruptions to do the dead man's float. Dead man's float, what an expression for a moment like this. He would swell up and the fishes would eat him. Better that than being cremated or buried. He'd always thought he'd like his ashes to be scattered at sea. The sea, the tomb. Now they wouldn't be ashes, but all of him. Wasn't that what you wanted? Now you have it. He smiled. He hasn't lost his sense of humor. Or maybe this is what death is. Hoping, smiling, despairing, understanding nothing, while on the verge of understanding everything. His mother had been buried. Afterwards, for a long time, Prendel had nightmares in which bodies emerged with huge worms slithering through them. His mother, unlike his father, always told him, it's good that you go all over the world, that you value things that aren't bought or sold or measured, that you don't always have your feet on the ground, that you start over again. Who knows if he will find her again? Who knows if there is a place where the dead reunite to go over their lives, comment on them, project them like a film, forward, rewind, pause, slow motion, freeze image. The cold has relieved the sensation of thirst, but his head hurts. He knows that's normal. The first symptoms of dehydration, increased heartbeat and respiration, spasms, nausea. And afterwards he will have hallucinations. He will see an island, a boat, He will hear voices, messages. He'll see salvation. He keeps going very slowly. It's difficult for him to move his arms. He can hardly feel his hands or feet. He orients himself by the stars. He keeps swimming towards the continent. In the depths of his heart, he believes that maybe he will get to a shipping lane for merchant ships or oil tankers. Maybe some boat will change direction for an unforeseen reason, a breakdown perhaps. In any case, he's still mocking his survival instinct. Sailing means knowing where we are, where we have come from, and where we are going. Therefore, it is perhaps more difficult to sail than to live. Right now, Prendel can calculate where he is. He can calculate the speed at which he has been swimming, his approximate direction, and the amount of time he has spent in the water. He is sailing without a vessel. This is what will kill him. Although he's lost, he hasn't lost himself. He's a good sailor. Frank and Katie knew that, and so they had set sail with him. They had trusted too much in his skill, or perhaps they didn't figure that sooner or later the sea kills you. The only difference is that if you are a good sailor, you know where you are at the moment of dying.
Fantastic, Flavia. Wonderful. Could you explain something about this excerpt, maybe this work?
Okay. Clearly, Dr. Prendel, who is the main character in this story, is has suffered a shipwreck, and he is in the middle of the ocean, just trying to get some shore, which is really very, very difficult or impossible because he's very far from any shore. So he's kind of living an adventure, but the adventure was finished, or maybe finished, at the moment where a pirate ship attacked him. No? So, okay, the thing is that, and I am not making a spoiler, he gets finally on an island which is apparently desert.
Interesting. These are works in translation. For me, it's a bit weird to hear you, to listen you in English, but it's wonderful. And what does it mean for you and for your writing also, that your works are translated into other languages and that they reach other audiences? Flavia, maybe if you want to start.
Okay. It's kind of weird. I mean, knowing and that are other people reading what is at some point yours, but not all of it, because of course this is a work by Laura McLaughlin. No, it's not all of by me. So in a way, I think that the most important or most interesting thing about being translated, which in my case is some languages, is like the fact that afterwards you are maybe invited to those places to talk with people, and you meet people, and most important even is like you are visiting places you wouldn't have. So, and I am a traveler, I made this around the world now. And for instance, no, in this the island of last truth. The Dr. Prendel is from New York, no, and his father is living in Georgetown, Texas. And I've been to New York and Texas, Georgetown, and at the university giving some classes. So, I mean, it's like a way of make wider your world, your literary world, not only your world, personal world, but also your literary world, because you are living and experiencing some other places and people and readings, because it's very important. And how is the influence of other readings on your work? Because there is an influence. I mean, it's unavoidable, I think.
It's difficult to hear you now, Laura.
Sorry.
Okay.
I said that maybe this is an inspiration for another book. I don't know. Marta, what is for you?
That's true. You never know. Yeah, well, I guess that what we writers want at the end of the day is to be read. So I'm glad that my books have been able to travel abroad. For example, they're reaching Argentina. Now I'm traveling to Buenos Aires for the book fair to promote the book. And I think that this is great. Because, like Fabia said, who's Argentinian, by the way, is great because it allows you to meet new people, to meet, to develop things that you would have never been able to develop had you not been there, and to get feedback from different type of readers, I guess. And well, as for English, I think that initiatives like this one, SANT JORDI New York, are great to show the world what we're doing. Hopefully some publisher will fall in love, with Matryoshkas and will let these voices be heard. So that's it.
I hope so, really. How is the translation process? This is something that you speak with the translator, or maybe you are separated for all this process because you only see the ending of all this process?
Am I going first?
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. In my case, and because I am also a translator, and I'm always interested in talking with the authors of the novels I am translating. I'm interested also in talking with my translators, and I always, or almost always do. I mean, I talk with them, and I am willing to give my opinions about some. If there are languages I understand, of course, like or English, Italian, or French, for instance, or Portuguese. I am able, but for instance, in Polish or German, I mean, I don't know what is going on there. No, I mean, but if I know the language, I'm even say some ideas or give some ideas to the translators. But always, I try always to talk with them. Yes, and it's very interesting. Doubts, and because of the doubts they put to you, you know how is going the translation. There are interesting doubts and not interesting doubts.
Yeah, that's true. But maybe you can learn something in this process. I think.
And you even can change some things in the next editions, because sometimes translators can see some may not. No mistakes, but some irregularities.
Things that can be improved, maybe. That's it. Yeah. And Marta, for you?
For me, I think we could take of looking at two different experiences, because I read in Catalan, and 3 of my novels have been also published. Well, 3 of them have also been published in Spanish, and also a sample of each novel has been translated into English with the aim of finding a publishing house. So, as for English, it was very nice for me to work with the translator, Peter Bush, who was very receptive to my comments, and I felt really connected to him through feedback, and it was easy, because he's a person who has translated a lot. He's the translator of Marcelo Dureda, for example. So he knows a lot about detail, about musicality, rhythm, and so on. But also there's the other experience, which is me translating myself into Spanish. I didn't do it for the first 2 novels, but I did it for this 3rd novel. And I didn't want to do it because translating meant, on the one hand, rewriting a novel that I had already written, and surely it would be better to take the time to read another one, a new novel. And on the other hand, Spanish is deceptively similar to Catalan. I mean, that means that the construction of the sentences is not exactly the same. The rhythm changes, the musicality needs to be worked on again. And well, I did it, and I'm happy with the result, and I think I will continue to do it from now on. But it was such an experience, because I had to ask myself, the feedback was with myself, and sometimes you are tempted to change something that is already published in another language, and you can't do it, or just wait for another hopefully wait for another edition, another possibility to change the text as it is somehow permanently evolving.
I want to add another question, if you let me, because I'm interested in which of your novels, if you can choose, is the most important for you now after all these years writing. If you have to choose, if maybe you cannot choose, but if you have to choose one of your novels, which one will it be? Please start with this one. What do you say?
I would say this one. I would say Matryoshkas. Because, like I said, the main subject is rape as a weapon of war. So I felt that it had, the possibility to shout, to cry out loud for these girls, for these women, for this, because it's been women from zero to, to really old women. It's 2 wars that we women live when there's a war. Not the regular one, and the war of being the hell, the hell of being a woman in a war and being treated as an object. So I think that if a novel gives you the possibility to make yourself useful in a way, to start talking about a subject that we try to avoid because it's not something we feel comfortable talking about, then it's good. And that's why I would say that's why this is the one I would choose if there was a fire,
Yeah. And for you, Flavia?
Okay, for me maybe it's a little more difficult because there are more than 40 books in my case. I began to write at 17 years old, and so it's so difficult to choose between my novels and short stories, books, and my poetry, and so
children books.
But I will answer. Hopefully, the next one.
Oh,
that's a good answer.
That's a good answer. Yes. So we will need to read that. Many thanks to both of you. I will ask you if you have another small excerpt of your book, if you can read us another, maybe shorter, because we don't have much time, but you can choose 1 or 2 minutes of another excerpt of your books. Maybe this time Flavia can start if you have. If not, maybe Marta has.
Okay. I would like to try with another one. It's my novel, The Carnivorous Plant, published by 3 Times Rebel, and it's by Andrea Mayo, one of my heteronymous. So it's and if it's okay, I will read just a page or. Okay, thank you. From now on, I will tell the whole truth. From now on, everything I say will be true. You'll say, I don't believe it. How easy it would be not to swallow the horror or think it could only happen to others. That wouldn't happen to me. I wouldn't stand for it. How could you allow someone to do such a thing to you? I used to be amongst you before, in the club that scores the weak, the one that considers they are to blame, complicit. What is weakness? And why tell the truth now? Why not before? You haven't the slightest idea what it's like, the fear of someone persecuting you. You haven't had to change your name, country, language. You are not me, even though I used to be one of you. It's okay?
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. And Marta, you?
Yes. You recall how, at first, your mother avoided you and the neighbors shunned you. They do that, your mother kept repeating, because they don't know what to say. When you'd had to muffle your scream and the words you wanted to spew out, you couldn't believe there were people who had none. You learned over time that not knowing how to choose them didn't mean you didn't have words. It was a form of paralysis in the face of horror, as you yourself froze it that first time. You saw hands frantically fumbling to undo trousers. Everything has changed over the years. When the time seems ripe to denounce the crimes, to speak up, to raise your voice, people don't talk about it anymore. Neighbors don't. Your mother doesn't. Above all, she acts as if nothing happened, not too much to spare herself the suffering as to avoid having to justify herself. Justifying herself as a woman who can't refer to rape without resorting to euphemisms. I don't know a single neighbor, she told you one day, who experienced anything like that. Even in your home, now that she's coming to stay, she'll keep avoiding the whole issue. Your mother spent years lecturing you. You dress like this, speak like that, and you can lead them to believe you're handling them, your rights on a plate. And their rights, she repeats, have much more weight, whether you like it or not. The logic is as simple as it is devious. If they can claim provocation, and you believe me, she says, they'll do anything to prove that, you're done for. You can't change things. Don't go looking for justice. If they think you owe it to them, that they've earned it, they think they've got the go-ahead. Then it's all tears.
Wow. Thank you very much, Marta, also to you. I don't know if you want to add something or not, and we can close this conversation.
I would like to just
yes.
I would like to say that the Carnivorous Plan also is translated by Laura McLaughlin, and as the understood, because it happens that you fell in love with your translators also. You know, I mean, I like the way she did the first work. No, she translated it, and then I was asking for her to the next publisher. So it's just a detail.
Yeah, I've also worked with Laura McLaughlin, and I think she's a great translator, as well as Peter Bush. So, and I think that Peter used to mentor Laura. So in the end, you know, they all know they work in the same way.
That's good, because sometimes you have a voice in another language, and if you can keep this voice, also it's better maybe for your readers. But I think everyone of them they do an excellent work. So I think Catalan into English is in good hands. Many thanks to both of you. It has been a real pleasure to share this time with you, and I hope it encourage many readers to explore your work and read in English. Many editors, also publishers, to publish the books that they are on translated yet. And thank you. See you next time. See you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks.